Legend has it that cats were born from human obsession. Feeding a cat was like feeding a mirror to one's own heart. When they felt joy, they turned into jade. Their pupils bloomed into golden lotuses. When they felt sorrow, they became miasma, their claws bound in chains. When the cat calamity began, karma fire burned through villages. Ordinary people kept their distance. Only the Jingo Temple could deal with them. An urgent news flash announced that Liju South Railway Station had been shut down due to the cat calamity. Tens of thousands of passengers were stranded. In a shopping mall in the 10th district, a cat beast broke in and attacked people at random. 3 were seriously injured. A young girl named Xiao Yu watched the broadcast, and worry crept across her face. A voice suddenly called her name, snapping her out of it. She quickly answered that she was coming. Meanwhile, a woman posed and asked if it was enough. She was one of the top 100 influencers, Kaizi. The photographer told her to lower herself a bit for the shot. Beside him, 2 people watched with flushed faces and nosebleeds. Kaizi complained that he was shooting borderline content. She called out to Xiao Yu to fix her makeup. Xiao Yu walked over with a makeup kit and apologized. Kaizi frowned, annoyed that she had been spacing out. As Xiao Yu fixed her makeup, she asked if Kaizi had heard that the cat calamity was getting worse. She explained that when they rented the building, the owner warned her that cat demons liked dark places, and being in a dim room right now made her uneasy. She couldn't shake the discomfort. Kaizi brushed it off. Xiao Yu still felt unsettled. Kaizi suddenly leaned in and pretended to be a cat. Xiao Yu panicked and jumped back. Xiao Yu turned to the group and asked if there were only 5 people when they arrived. Kaizi confirmed it. She counted them out. The photography teacher, the prop teacher, the lighting teacher, Xiao Yu, and herself. Xiao Yu noticed something behind them. A man stood behind the lighting teacher. She asked if he was Kaizi's friend. Kaizi was surprised. He wasn't part of the group, yet somehow it felt like he had been there the whole time. They all went pale. The dark figure stepped forward and said he had been waiting for a long time. The crew panicked and started throwing things at him. A camera hit his head, but he didn't react. Blood began to drip down. He repeated that he had been waiting for a long time. Everyone was terrified and backed away. Kaizi asked Xiao Yu for help, but Xiao Yu was frozen in fear. The man stopped just a few steps away from them, and then he asked for Kaizi's autograph. He said he was her fan. Kaizi and Xiao Yu froze, completely confused. He held out his backpack, asking her to sign it. The crew snapped and started beating him up. They felt like they had been played. One of them yelled at him to pay for the broken camera. Kaizi stopped them and reminded them about the homicide case in the area. There was no need to add another body. With one final shove, they kicked the fan out of the building. Once things settled down, the photographer admitted he had been scared to death. He thought it was a real cat calamity. Kaizi learned that this kind of misunderstanding was common as their live stream grew more popular, but she still warned them that a cat calamity was extremely dangerous. She pointed out that even though the factory was in a busy area, it had been abandoned for a long time. Xiao Yu and the photographer listened in shock. They found it hard to believe something that dangerous could exist in such a prosperous part of the city. Kaizi went on to warn them that if they ever truly encountered a cat calamity, they must notify the Lugo Temple immediately. She kept talking until she noticed the crew pointing behind her. She froze. A cat monster stood right behind her. Its massive claws slowly reached toward her. The crew screamed and ran. She shouted for them to notify the Jongo Temple immediately. An urgent alert echoed across the temple. A severe cat calamity had been reported at an abandoned factory in the Liju 10th district. The threat level was estimated at 5. Citizens were told to evacuate at once. At the Great Tang Jengo Temple, Little Minister Duanqing frowned. These high-level incidents were happening far too often. Beside her stood a blonde woman with round glasses, Temple Supervisor Dai Dai. She asked what they should do since all special-grade cat masters were currently away in the capital district. Duanqing asked if there were any capable experts left. Dai Dai replied that a quasi-senior cat master had recently arrived. She only had a level 4 cat, but she had a record of defeating a level 5 cat calamity. The little minister smirked as she realized who it was. She decided to assign the mission to this quasi-senior cat master, and if she succeeded, her request for early promotion would be approved. Elsewhere, the chosen cat master stood ready. She was a striking woman with long, flowing red hair and sharp purple eyes. From a decorative orb, a small cat with piercing blue eyes appeared. It was a royal cat named Kan Sheng. She used cat technique ink play to descend. She landed on top of a building. The pilot of a helicopter noticed her. Sheng scolded the woman, Goikan, for being too reckless. But Guikan was just excited about the promise of a promotion. They continued moving across the rooftops. The pair finally landed on the edge of a rooftop. Guikan asked if they had reached the right place. Sheng confirmed and warned her to be careful. The opponent's strength was on par with his own. They stood above an old building called the Manhwa workshop. Guikan brushed it off. She said no one was stronger than him and asked about the situation. Sheng told her to look below. Guikan followed his gaze. Below them stood a massive, muscular creature covered in leopard-like spots. It was their target. She focused on it. It looked completely feral. Its claws and fur were stained with fresh blood, and it licked the blood from its paw. Guikan reached out her hand toward Sheng. The small cat placed his paw in her palm, letting out a soft meow as they prepared to move. Black ink flowed and wrapped around her hand. She looked down at the small figure of the beast in the courtyard below. Then they jumped. The beast noticed them. As she fell, Guikan formed a dark spear made of ink. The beast looked up at the last second. Before it could react, Guikan swung the spear with full force. Caught off guard, the beast was slashed across its upper body. Blood burst out from the deep wound. The beast slammed onto its back from the impact. Guikan pulled her arm back. Then, she hurled the spear. It struck the beast, forcing its head back as blood sprayed from its mouth. Guikan thought she had won. She landed as the beast was pinned to the ground by her spear. The spear dissolved back into black ink. Sheng emerged from the ink and leapt onto her shoulder. The muscular beast's hand began to twitch. Guikan and Sheng sensed the change and glanced behind them, eyes sharp with caution. To her surprise, the beast had vanished. In the next instant, its massive figure appeared right behind her. She sensed it at the last second. The beast struck and pierced straight through her. Guikan turned pale, her eyes filled with fear as blood spread across her dress. The beast mocked her, asking if that was all she had. It called her pathetically weak. One hand gripped her head, while the other remained buried where it had pierced her. Suddenly, a black and purple aura burst from her wound and wrapped around the beast's fist. Behind the beast, Guikan stood with her arms crossed. The creature realized it had only struck a clone. Guikan challenged it. The beast lunged at her, asking if she really thought a cheap trick could catch it. Guikan calmly told it to worry about itself first. Black ink began seeping out from the beast's wounds. The ink quickly spread through its bloodstream. She explained that her ink play technique flowed through the meridians, paralyzing the limbs in a single breath. The beast started to feel its body go stiff. In the next instant, the ink burst violently from its wounds. Sheng examined the fallen body and noted that everything was now under control. He remarked that a cat could never truly defeat a human. Guikan replied that it wasn't about that. It simply couldn't defeat her. Sheng said she was just pretending to be humble. Guikan entered the building and reported that the source of the cat calamity had been neutralized. Dai reminded her to focus on finding the internet celebrity and make sure she survived. Guikan grew annoyed, since she had already been told that several times. Then she noticed something, and her expression turned grim. She found Casey chained up and commented that she looked worse than dead. They needed to rescue her immediately. Guikan stepped into the room. The walls were stained with blood, and chains hung from the ceiling. She spotted Xiaoyu, lifeless, a chain wrapped around her neck. She freed Kaizi and carried her out. She didn't notice the figure watching from the shadows. The stranger assumed Guikan was connected to the victims. That confirmed he had found the right place. Guikan met Sheng outside. Sheng asked about the woman, and she said Kaizi was still unconscious. Then she admitted she felt like someone was watching them. Sheng told her to relax. The cat demon had already been defeated, but suddenly he paused and told her to wait. Thinking back to the fight, something felt off. It had been too easy. Sheng went back inside to investigate. Guikan watched him leave. Then suddenly a hand covered her mouth from behind. It was Kaizi. A burst of red energy flared around them. Kaizi gestured for her to stay quiet. The woman, now a cat hybrid, whispered for Guikan not to make a sound. Sheng returned to the courtyard to inspect the beast. It lay completely still. He leaned closer and sniffed the corpse. Something felt wrong. It smelled like it had been dead for a long time. He studied the body. The skin and flesh didn't look like it had just died. A realization formed in his mind. Suddenly, the beast's hand shot up in a flash. Sheng was caught and crushed in its grip. The beast, which should have been dead, slowly sat up. It told Sheng that although he was clever for figuring it out, there would be no reward. It moved to finish him. But Sheng dissolved into black ink. The beast laughed loudly, but then paused in confusion. In the next moment, dark purple ink vines coiled tightly around its arm. Panic flashed across the beast's face. The ink spread rapidly across its body, binding its torso completely. It groaned as the ink consumed it. Sheng reappeared and realized the truth. It was only a puppet. He transformed his arm into a scythe, ready to slice it into pieces and see if it could still revive after that. Suddenly, a voice told him to calm down. He froze in surprise. Kaizi stood there, now a cat-like woman, holding Guican hostage with one hand wrapped around her neck. Sheng bared his teeth and demanded she let Guican go. Dark ink energy surged forward and shot toward Kaizi. With a casual swing of her arm, Kaizi released sharp wind strikes that deflected the attack. The impact blasted Sheng backward. He slammed onto the ground with a heavy thud. Guican called out to him, worried. Kaizi smirked when she saw that concern, for such a small cat. She flung Guican toward Sheng. Guican was hurled into a brick wall with crushing force. She hit hard and dropped to the ground, reaching out weakly to Sheng. Kaizi looked down at them and sneered. For a high-level Imperial cat user, she was nothing special after all. Guican looked up at the woman with a tired expression. Kaizi coldly said she wasn't even as good as a stray cat. Kaizi summoned Hu Tai and ordered him to get up. Hu Tai rose once more, and Kaizi left the rest to him. He charged at them while Guican simply accepted their fate. He slashed at them with his claws. But suddenly, green ribbons of energy wrapped around Tai's fingers. The massive beast froze in shock, and Guican was left confused. Guican and Sheng stared in disbelief. The beast looked up and spotted a floating device. It roared in anger, insulted that someone dared restrain it with such a trash device. With brute force, it broke free. It raged at how they tried to contain its power inside such an inferior cat cage. Then its eyes widened. More devices were descending from the sky. In the next moment, bright ribbons of energy shot out and wrapped around him again. Guican asked Sheng if they had backup. The small cat said nothing. Kaizi stood there, her expression dark. She muttered that they were useless. Annoyed, she said she would handle everything herself. She attacked Guican and Sheng, but someone stepped in and blocked the strike. It was a young man with blonde bangs. Guican recognized him as her senior. He remarked that he once thought she was impressive, but now she seemed mediocre. He said he wanted to try things himself. Guican noticed his token and realized he was only a junior Imperial cat user. Panic surged through her again. He was seriously planning to face a level 5 cat calamity alone. The blonde boy walked forward toward Kaizi, muttering to himself. He complained about how disappointing it was when streamers acted nothing like their online personas, not even willing to give an autograph in person, and now trying to send him to his grave. Guican shouted at him to stop, warning that the Catwoman was far beyond him, and that he would die if he kept going. The blonde boy paused. He glanced back over his shoulder, smiled, and calmly said, "That wouldn't happen." The blonde boy played with a small blue cube. With a smooth motion, he flicked it toward Kaizi. Kaizi stopped it with a single finger. The blonde boy clicked his tongue in mock disappointment. Just as he thought, cheap tools like that cage weren't enough to restrain something powerful. They watched in silence as the device wrapped around Hu Tai instead. Kaizi asked if he was also a cat handler from the Jianggu Temple. He admitted he didn't even have a contract cat yet, so he hadn't passed the test to become a junior cat handler. But he said after today like he expected to get his first one. Kaizi frowned, confused. Then her eyes widened. He was talking about her. She burst into loud, hysterical laughter. Sheng quietly told Guican they should look for a chance to escape. The blonde boy didn't seem reliable at all. Kaizi asked if anyone had ever told him that a cat controller's strength must match their contract cat. She warned him that if the master was weak and the servant was strong, a simple contract couldn't control her. A level 5 cat like her was considered a high-risk calamity. The blonde boy didn't react. He simply smiled. He gently removed her hand from his face and told her that when the time came, he would take her to the junior cat handler exam. He trusted she wouldn't embarrass him. That completely set her off. He noticed the hand he was holding twitch. In a sudden motion, Kaizi slashed her claws across his palm. Blood sprayed into the air. He looked at her and calmly asked if she was angry. She licked the blood and revealed she still planned to use her current identity for a while longer, which meant she had no reason to keep playing along with him anymore. She reached down and touched a talisman hanging from her skirt, small coins tied together. A glowing purple energy burst from it as she activated a powerful technique. Cat rule. Petting. The tiger's skin. 3 beastly silhouettes appeared beside her. Gaoiken was shocked. Controlling 3 puppets at once. This was one of the most troublesome cat rules. The forms of the beast fully took shape, and Gikan's heart sank. They were all high-level threats. At the rear stood Hu Ming, a massive feline with striped fur and a heavily muscled body, a level 4 threat. Beside him stood Kaizi, ready for battle. Next to her were Huji, a level 5 threat, and Hu Tai, a level 2 threat. Kaizi declared that no one here would leave alive. Sensing the overwhelming pressure, the blonde boy warned Guikan that he might not be able to protect her. Kaizi gave the order. Hu Ming would strike first. She wanted to see the true strength of the Jingguo Temple's elites. Hu Ming lowered his body. A blazing aura of fire and heat wrapped around him. Then he slammed one massive hand into the ground. The earth trembled violently beneath them. Guikan's eyes filled with fear. Hu Ming's claws tore deep into the surface, and a massive crack shot forward. A wave of shattered stone and burning fire surged straight toward them. Guikan and the blonde boy were frozen in shock and panic. A blinding explosion erupted from the ground. Chunks of earth blasted into the air. The entire area was devastated, but Kaizi remained unharmed. Yo had formed a protective energy shield around them. It seemed the attack had drained Hu Ming's strength. Debris rained down everywhere, but Yo's barrier held firm. With a confident grin, Kaizi declared the battle over. Then, a silhouette stepped out from the dust and smoke. Yo immediately became alert. The blonde boy and Guikan walked out completely unharmed. Kaizi's expression twisted in shock and confusion. The blonde boy smirked and agreed. It really was over. Then he snapped his fingers. 1 month ago, he had just arrived in a strange world. A voice shouted that there was a cat. A beast lunged at him. He couldn't believe it was supposed to be a cat. He hadn't even had time to settle in before a cat demon attacked him. Before he could react, it struck. Its claws tore into his flesh, sending blood spraying from the wound. If things had gone normally, he would have died right there. But the moment his blood touched the cat demon, it recoiled in agony. For some reason he still didn't understand, his blood was deadly to these creatures. He didn't have time to think about it then. Right now, when he snapped his fingers, a bolt of yellow energy cracked through the air. Kaizi's confident expression broke into confusion. She demanded to know what just happened. A terrifying aura formed, shaping into a monstrous face. Kaizi's knees gave out as she cried in fear, asking what kind of aura this was. The overwhelming energy surged, framing the blonde boy's silhouette. The pressure was crushing. Kaizi collapsed to her knees. The other beasts couldn't withstand it either. Their eyes went blank as they lost control and dropped unconscious. Kaizi could only stare in disbelief. Then, just as suddenly, the dark aura vanished. Only the smiling blonde boy remained. Guikan's eyes were wide, her jaw hanging open. She couldn't believe it. He had just subdued a level 5 great cat with a single snap of his fingers. On the ground, a small orange cat trembled in fear. The blonde boy calmly walked over. He lifted the trembling cat into the air and declared that from now on, he finally had his first personal cat protector. It took a while to properly introduce our main protagonist, but this is him. His name is Gan Lai. He held up a heavy metal collar. He said that with a big catch like this, his employment assessment next month would be easy. The small orange cat sat on Kaizi's stomach. He called it Fukan and asked why it had run off. He locked Kaizi in place with a monster-suppressing stone cuff. He grinned, clearly pleased that the capture had succeeded. Guikan shouted, demanding to know what he was doing. She told him to stop, but he casually replied that he was taking the cat back with him. Guikan was furious. She ordered Sheng to chase after him. But Sheng trembled. He said something was wrong with that man. There was some kind of curse in his blood. Guikan pulled him close. Sheng explained that any cat that harmed him, even a rank 4 or rank 5 cat demon, would rapidly lose its power and even regress into a harmless, pet-like form. Guikan immediately linked this to what had just happened. The level 5 cat... It wasn't normal. She wondered if she should report this to her superiors. She touched her ear and activated a small communicator. She identified herself as Chu Guikan. She reported that the cat monster had been suppressed and that support was no longer needed. But she clarified, it wasn't her who did it. She said she would explain everything once she returned to the temple. Elsewhere, Lai walked up to a bun stand with his cats. The vendor asked what he wanted. He ordered 2 meat buns and handed over 20 yuan, then hesitated, not letting go of the money. Just a month ago, he had been broke, wandering through this world of cat demons with only Fukan by his side. In his previous life, he owned a cat cafe. Raising cats was the only thing he knew how to do. To survive here, he had no choice but to rely on the government. He became an imperial cat envoy of the Jingguo Temple, specializing in handling cat-related incidents. The vendor took the money but calmly told him the total was actually 25 wen. He froze. He knew it should only cost 20. The vendor explained that the packaging fee was charged separately. That made him curse under his breath. Later they sat on a park bench to eat. Lai watched as Fukan reached out for the meat bun. He told the little cat to slow down. There was only one left. Becoming an imperial cat envoy wasn't easy. He had to pass multiple tests at the Janggo Temple. Most importantly, he needed a strong imperial cat of his own. And a cat like Fukan clearly didn't meet their standards. That was why he still wasn't officially employed. Fukan happily kept eating, while Kaizi sat to the side, pouting. Still, Lai felt hopeful. Maybe his luck had finally turned. He lifted Fukan into the air, celebrating. He told him that once they passed the assessment in a few days, their good life would finally begin. Fukan simply replied with a soft meow. Lai sighed and noted that his pet really wasn't as smart as the local cat demons. Then his gaze shifted to Kaizi. He told her to behave from now on. She stayed silent. He shrugged and said it didn't matter. If needed, turning in a cold, famous streamer like her for a bounty would still be worth it. Kaizi trembled. Tears filled her eyes as she begged him not to take her to the Janggo Temple. She said she was willing to negotiate anything, but he stood firm. Even as an auxiliary member, he had principles. He couldn't allow a cat demon like her to keep causing harm. Desperate, she offered him money. His face instantly flushed red as he started to reconsider. Our broke MC was about to take advantage of every single bit of this situation. Moments later, Kaizi stood in front of an ATM. Her eyes widened. The screen flashed. Her account had been frozen. She immediately suspected that the ugly woman had exposed her to the Jingguo Temple. If she was taken there, it would all be over. After a moment of silence, she made her decision. For now, it was better to stay with the blonde man. In the Lijiu region, cat-related disasters had become more frequent. Fear spread among the people. As a result, the status of imperial cat handlers kept rising. They became highly valued by the government, and the strongest among them were treated with great respect. Kaizi watched the blonde boy casually picking his nose and wondered, was he really this dumb, or was he just pretending? He suddenly leaned over her and demanded the money. She squeaked in fear. Stuttering, she explained that her account had been frozen. He sighed and said it wasn't a big deal. Then he grabbed her by the tail and dragged her along, casually stating that a level 5 cat demon like her could be worth at least 500,000 yuan. She panicked and reminded him that he was supposed to be her fan. He waved it off, telling her to complain to his empty wallet instead. Then he mentioned there was another option. Kaizi shivered. That harmless smile of his suddenly felt very dangerous. He brought up the bounty on her head again. Her wanted poster was worth a lot. But compared to that, forming a contract with her and becoming a proper imperial cat handler was far more tempting. To be officially recognized, an imperial cat envoy had to pass an assessment based on the demon power level of their contracted cat. And with a normal cat like Fukan, that wasn't going to work. Suddenly, Kaizi lifted his chin with a finger and told him it wasn't impossible for her to obey him and become his imperial cat. With her strength, he could pass the test easily, but he had to promise that once he gained his official rank, he would give her a proper position so she could escape her stray cat status. She added that if that didn't work, she could repay him in other ways. She gave him a slow, teasing look. The blonde boy blushed. She leaned in closer and pushed him further. He suddenly covered her mouth. His expression turned serious as he told her he wouldn't be swayed. Giga Chad MC right here, folks. On an empty street. A loud engine roar cut through the air as Guikan sped forward on her motorcycle. Her smartwatch beeped. She was notified that the level 5 mission results had been released. She already knew she wouldn't be promoted since Kaizi wasn't technically captured by her. The voice confirmed it calmly. The level 5 cat demon Kaizi had escaped, and due to her failure to capture her, Guikan was demoted to intermediate rank. She froze in shock and hit the brakes. She asked Sheng if it was even possible for Kaizi to escape. Sheng replied that it was unlikely. He recalled the blonde man's strength and believed Kaizi wouldn't dare run away. Guikan wondered if Kaizi had accomplices. Sheng dismissed it, saying they knew exactly what kind of person that kid was. The chance for a top fan to get close to a female streamer doesn't come often, so considering how humans act when they're, well, not thinking straight, it said a lot. Sheng suggested they head back the way they came. Gikan sped off again, clearly frustrated. The motorcycle passed a roadside restaurant where Lai and Kaizi were sitting together. They raised their large glass mugs and clinked them in a casual toast. Lai noticed her. Kaizi didn't seem to care. She lifted her phone to take a selfie. Then she casually sat on his lap and wrapped her arms around him. He froze. Yeah. He walked straight into that one. Someone complained that more than 30% of the 8,000 veteran students in the current batch had connections. His expression darkened as he called it unfair. He questioned why status mattered more than skill. This was Li Moyuan, the chief banner officer of the elementary division. He grumbled that instead of relying on them to catch cat demons, he would probably need to assign extra people just to babysit them. He added that if this kept up, there would be no point in keeping Jingguo Temple around. A calm voice immediately warned him to watch his words and actions. Dai told him to calm down. She said the temple had survived on more than strength alone. She reminded him that connections also had value. She told him to be patient. He still looked unconvinced. He muttered that it was disgusting. She only smiled. He warned her not to let it happen again. Meanwhile, in a large exam hall, a huge crowd had gathered. The official Imperial Cat Handler certification exam was about to begin. Thousands of candidates were told to stay quiet and enter the facility in an orderly manner. A man took a deep breath. He shouted and threw a punch. The machine displayed his score. A red 98 lit up. The crowd burst into excitement. They rushed over and started asking him questions. Through the noise, an examiner holding a clipboard called for silence, recorded the result of 98 stones, and ordered the next group to step forward. A line of muscular men and their beast-like companions waited as the examiner called out one score after another. One large man walked away after scoring 66 stones. Lai stood in line with Kaizi's puppet, Hu Chi. It was finally our MC's turn. He handed his admission ticket to the examiner. The examiner looked at the cat demon's thin frame and doubted his strength, wondering if the boy had just grabbed some random kitten for the test. Suddenly, someone shoved him aside. A group led by Finn cut in line. One of them told him to get lost. Lai protested. He looked at the crowd, but the others only looked away or whistled, pretending not to notice his call for fairness. The examiner sighed and told him to settle down. He promised to test him next. Then he immediately called for the next group, Ashina Finn. Finn muttered, "Trash." Finn stepped forward with his cat. He took a steady breath. Suddenly, flames burst around him. Finn dropped into a low stance as the fire spun around him in a fierce circle. His fist, wrapped in flames, slammed into the machine. The crowd froze in shock. They couldn't believe that kind of power was even possible. The machine displayed the result. A score of 198 appeared. Finn's group erupted in cheers. One man shouted that the score was just below the intermediate division level, while another praised Finn as a rare genius. Finn walked away with confidence. He challenged our MC to prove how capable his useless cat really was. Lai didn't understand why Finn was acting so arrogant. As the cheers continued, Lai's confidence began to shake. He nervously tapped his earpiece, trying to get reassurance from Kaizi on the other end. He worried about making a fool of himself. He wanted her to take the test instead, but that could expose them instantly. From a luxurious lounge, Kaizi relaxed on a sofa, surrounded by all kinds of cakes and desserts. She told him to calm down. She admitted that while Huji was a bit weak, she was still more than enough for an elementary-level exam. She knew that if she stepped in herself, things would get messy. Then she casually went back to eating. Lai sighed and hoped Huji would come through. He asked her to lend him her power. He stepped forward, but his foot hit a puddle and he slipped. He slammed face first into the machine. The machine began flashing. It kept running. The spectators watched in complete disbelief. In the distance, a man calmly sipped his tea while a maid stood beside him. Even they were surprised. Finn's eyes widened. Lai held his cheek. He apologized and asked for a retest, but no one answered him. Instead, the examiner's jaw dropped. He wondered if the boy was actually an intermediate Imperial cat handler. The machine displayed the result. It showed 386. Our MC was stunned that his accident had somehow worked. The testing machine confirmed it and announced the score. The crowd exploded in shock and praise. They started whispering, trying to guess his background. Finn stood there in disbelief. Moments later, Finn introduced himself. He said he was from the Lu clan, one of the 6 great clans of Jingzhou. His full name was Ashina Finn. He asked for Lai's name. Finn told him to stop pretending. He assumed the boy had a powerful imperial cat, something only big families could afford. He was about to reveal his own cat, but Lai asked him what nonsense he was talking about. That only made Finn angrier. He accused the boy of being arrogant. He reminded him that in half a year there would be an assessment for promotion to junior imperial cat handler, and he wanted to see how long the boy could keep hiding his real power. Finn told him to take care of himself and promised he wouldn't go easy on him if they met in the arena in 6 months. At this point, our boy was left completely confused. At a boxing ring, an examiner stood on a raised platform and announced the start of the second exam. He explained the rules. He said controlling cat demons was essential, and any method was allowed. To pass, a candidate had to maintain control over a cat demon for more than 30 seconds. He listed a series of tools, including demon-suppressing stone cuffs, a silk ball cage, and a demon-suppressing stone circle. The final tool was the ruthless iron hand. Lastly, the examiner introduced Xiaoyu, the imperial cat who would assist in the test. The examiner told everyone not to worry since she was a civil servant under Jingo Temple. Xiaoyu smiled and playfully asked the candidates to be gentle with her. A brown-haired candidate quickly stepped forward and declared that he would go first. He raised a cube and proudly announced it was his family treasure, the silk cage. He claimed it had helped the Li family capture dozens of cat demons and said he wanted to see if Xiaoyu could handle its power. With a confident shout, he activated the silk cage. 100 talismans. Xiaoyu saw it coming. Energy wrapped around her, and she admitted the technique was somewhat interesting. But in the next moment, she broke free, and the energy shattered. It wasn't that the tool was weak. His power just wasn't enough. The candidate stood there in shock. The examiner raised a sign and checked the time. He announced the result. Since it only lasted 2 seconds, it was a failure. The candidate angrily threw his family treasure to the ground. Xiaoyu smiled and told him to try again next year before calling the next candidate. Another man stepped forward and stated that an imperial cat from Jingo Temple was clearly no ordinary opponent. Finn stepped forward with confidence. He showed his device and said his cage was stronger. He unleashed his technique, 3,000 command spells. Energy shot out and wrapped around Xiaoyu. It forced her into a cat form. Then the cage snapped shut and trapped her. It shook 3 times, then with a soft poof, the cat Pokemon was caught. The onlookers stared in amazement at what just happened. Xiaoyu struggled inside the capsule trying to break free. Then Finn stepped in and pressed the device, releasing her. Xiaoyu's body finally broke free. She turned back into a human and complained that it hurt. The examiner announced the time, 3 seconds. That meant Finn passed. The crowd cheered as Finn stepped down. Suddenly, in the other ring, someone announced that Ganlai had subdued the cat in just 2 seconds. The crowd went silent. Of course, Finn was shocked to hear that. In the arena, Ganlai squished Yo's cheeks, clearly proud of himself. Meanwhile, a young cat-like woman named Little Boo lay defeated. A woman in a black suit rushed to her side and asked if she was okay. She just sobbed loudly. She looked terrified as she questioned her decision to risk her life for a job where she only eats and waits to die. Finn moved closer. He was shocked. He wondered how it happened. A third-rank cat shouldn't be able to do that. Unless the boy bribed the entire staff. The examiner told everyone to wait as they called for a rotation examiner. Finn now understood the outrageous scores, and no one even dared to complain. He suspected the boy had a powerful background. After 4 intense rounds of examination, the assessment finally ended. It was already nighttime when the candidates were told to gather in the main hall. The top 10 candidates were called to the stage to receive their rewards. Excitement spread through the hall as the chief flag officer made his appearance. An aide in a green robe bowed and introduced the top 5 candidates to the chief. He highlighted one student in particular, Finn, as a rare and exceptional talent. The candidate stood in a line and gave a formal greeting. He looked directly at the blonde-haired boy, Finn, and congratulated him for entering the Jingo Temple with such excellent results. He reviewed Finn's official documents before turning to the group with a heavy gaze. From that moment on, he told them to stay diligent. The country must be protected, and peace must be brought to the people. Finn was surprised by the sudden shift in tone. With a stern expression, Chief Li Moyuan said they must remember their original intentions and never forget their mission. He stood before the recruits and gave a final warning. Never collude with evildoers or join corrupt ranks. He tapped Lai's shoulder and asked if he understood. Lai looked completely confused. He pointed at himself with a shaky finger, wondering why the chief was speaking directly to him. In the background, a blonde woman asked Finn where the boy had come from. The aide in green quickly barked at the boy to snap out of it and answer the chief. Startled, he shouted his thanks to the Jinguo Temple for their training and loudly promised to become a pioneer who would serve the country faithfully. The chief noted that the newcomer had a lot of spirit and admitted that he had performed well during the assessment. The aide credited their success to the chief's wise leadership, and just like that, they left the room. The candidates stood in tense silence for a few seconds. Then, the others quickly crowded around Lai. One boy threw an arm over his shoulder and demanded to know his background, while another shouted in disbelief that he had actually won the assessment. They treated him like a celebrity, all eager to be linked to the new champion. Finn, the blonde woman, a rich-looking brown-haired man, and a purple-haired woman gathered nearby. The man asked Finn where the boy came from, and Finn replied that he wasn't one of them. A girl with purple-streaked hair pointed out that he wasn't part of their group. She said he must be a commoner, since Deputy Chief Li was known to dislike nobles. Finn found it hard to believe that a commoner with no background could achieve something like that. Still, he considered the possibility. With a performance like that on the exam, despite his status, it could only mean one thing. Finn concluded that Lai was a genius. The Imperial Cat Envoy residence stood in the prime area of Lizhou. A vast stretch of lush greenery and elegant estates sat beneath towering skyscrapers. Most of the residents were elites. An attendant guided Lai to a house. The house was modern and elegant. It had a gate and a garden. The attendant said it was assigned to him. Lai was surprised. The attendant explained that this was only standard housing for the elementary division. He encouraged Lai to work hard and aim for the intermediate division if he found it lacking. But Lai couldn't even process that kind of luxury. The attendant placed the keys in his hands and told him to endure it for now. Lai just stood there, confused about why he would ever be unsatisfied. Lai opened the door and gasped. It was incredible. Kaizi and Fukan followed behind him, his eyes lit up at the luxury. He stepped into the living room and stared at the high ceilings and bright lights. He walked out onto the balcony and leaned over the railing. As he explored the place, he kept shouting in excitement. He found a quiet corner in the backyard and sat on the steps. He held Fukan in his arms while Kaizi watched from the doorway. Then, he went to the bathroom and relaxed in the large tub filled with bubbles while Fukan floated beside him. Finally, he went to the bedroom and lay down in the large, soft bed. As he drifted off to sleep, Kaizi stood over him with a stern look. She glared at his sleeping face. Suddenly, smoke swirled around her body. With a flash of light, she turned back into a small, grumpy yellow cat. She screamed at him, calling him a stinky little fish, and mocking his non-stop wowing. She bit him hard. Lai yelped and flailed his arms. Kaizi threatened to bite him to death for driving her crazy, but she suddenly froze when a teardrop landed on her head. Confused, she looked up and saw that he was crying. She quickly got defensive and accused him of faking it to avoid trouble. He looked down with a soft, sad smile and said his tears weren't from the bite. He was remembering the past. Lai recalled his past. His cat shelter had gone bankrupt. With his last bit of money and his cat by his side, he packed his bags into a car and drove back to the countryside. He drove away with a small smile. Then a massive red truck came rushing straight at him. Apparently, Truck Kun striked again, and there's no way he could have prevented this. When he opened his eyes again, he was in another world. He had nothing but his cat. His luck only got worse. A swindler tricked him out of his watch. He got pickpocketed. He was scammed again and again. When he tried to ask for help, the locals reacted strangely. He approached a man while holding his cat, but the stranger backed away in pure fear. The moment people saw his cat, they panicked and called the Jingguo Temple. He couldn't understand what was so scary about a cat, until one attacked him. It was huge, muscular, not something you'd want to pet. He spent over a month living on the streets, lost and confused. He slept on a thin mat in alleyways, with only his cat and a small carrier beside him. Back in the present, he felt overwhelmed. He finally had a place to call his own. Kaizi noticed he had been spacing out for a while. She asked what he was thinking about and reminded him of their deal. Lai looked at her with a blank expression. That made her furious. She reminded him of their agreement. She would help him get accepted into this world, and in return, he would grant her official imperial cat status. Lai finally remembered. He took out the green card for the Cat God Pact. Kaizi shifted back into her human form. She smiled in excitement. She was finally going to gain official status. The Cat God Pact was a contract created by the Jingguo Temple to control cat demons. Once a cat handler and a cat demon signed it, their powers merged, allowing the handler to use the cat demon's abilities in human form. For house cats, the handler's identity served as their entry into human society. A cat demon without a pact was like an unregistered citizen, seen as a hidden danger. But once the pact was signed and the official hiring letter was granted, the cat demon would no longer be hunted. They stamped the contract, and just like that, it was done. Kaizi felt relieved. She was finally safe. Lai, now sleepy, decided to head back to bed. Her expression slowly turned sinister as a thought crossed her mind. Things would be much easier now. She looked at the orange cat and dismissed it completely. Since the guy had no other cat demons, she believed her strength alone would be enough to control him and make him obey her every command. Soon, he would be nothing more than her puppet. Suddenly, Lai remembered something important. He reached into his bag and sighed, saying he only had one hiring letter, so his other cats wouldn't get one. Kaizi froze. Other cats? Lai casually called out their names: Yuanbao, Cola, Tang Yuan, and Walnut. In an instant, 4 different cats jumped out of his bag. Kaizi screamed in shock, demanding to know how he could possibly have more cats. Lai just laughed awkwardly and scratched his head. He forgot to mention that aside from Fukan, his other cats were a bit special. Meanwhile, Fukan stayed completely calm, not bothered at all. Tang Yuan wore a festive lion dance hat. Walnut had a red scarf with little bells. Yuan Bao was white with a pink ribbon on its tail, sleek and clean. And Cola was a large, scarred tabby. Kaizi began to tremble. She quickly insisted that she never planned to break up their family. She could feel the overwhelming pressure coming from them. She immediately changed her tone and said she wanted to join the family instead. At that moment, she realized her plan would have to wait. The next day, a welcome party was held for the newly promoted cat controllers of the elementary department. A woman with dark brown hair and oval glasses told them that even though they had passed their assessments, they shouldn't let their guard down. She explained that while their individual strength was limited, the elementary department was the most important branch. They handled over 90% of the Jingo Temple's tasks every year. This woman was Chung Yichuan, an elementary model. At one of the tables, a few young men gathered around a grill sharing a meal. They felt a wave of anxiety as they talked about the heavy workload ahead. One recruit wondered how they would find time for so many tasks. Another mentioned a rumor that some members were demoted back to auxiliary status if they failed to meet their quotas. Yichuan noticed their expressions and laughed, telling them there was no need to be so nervous. She raised her glass and announced that the banquet was meant to celebrate their promotion to official cat handlers. The tension in the room faded, replaced by excitement. The recruits cheered and clinked their glasses. Meanwhile, one table didn't share the festive mood. In fact, someone there looked clearly annoyed by the noise. It was the same group that had been with Finn earlier. A blonde woman in a white dress took a sip of her drink and complained that the food was too ordinary, nothing compared to her personal chef's cooking. Her companions agreed, staring at their plates with disappointment. Finn said it couldn't be helped. This was just a regular restaurant, and reaching that level was already impressive. Meanwhile, Lai sat beside them, eating with full enthusiasm. If they had ever starved on the streets, they'd appreciate the food a lot more. That one comment set everyone off. The blonde woman snapped. She stood up and yelled at him to spit out the food, reminding him that she was the one who paid for the extra meal. Her friends stared in shock or tried to calm her down as the peaceful dinner turned chaotic. Lai just laughed awkwardly. He said they should keep things separate and refused to thank her for the food itself. But then he added, half joking, that for the next 2 hours, she was basically like a parent to him, since she gave him a second life through that meal. The woman questioned why Finn had brought Lai. The man beside her agreed. Sharing a meal was one thing, but he didn't understand why Finn invited him to the evening matter as well. Finn said it wouldn't be a problem. Lai then asked what this evening matter actually was. With a flushed face, Lai immediately jumped to conclusions. He imagined some kind of rich nightlife entertainment. In his mind, a pink-haired woman in a revealing outfit raised a glass of alcohol. The group immediately yelled at him to stop his wild imagination. Finn told him to stop overthinking. He reminded Lai about the Jingo Elementary Division's monthly mission assessment standard. If they failed to complete it, they would be demoted back to auxiliary status. Finn continued, explaining that although there were many catlings, they were still limited. Anyone who failed to meet the mission quota would eventually be cut. Gan Lai, clearly uninterested, kept stuffing his face with meat and simply asked, "So?" Finn told them that if they wanted to stay in the elementary division, or move up to intermediate, they had to be smart about it. Lai asked if that meant pulling strings. Their companions immediately reacted with embarrassment and irritation. Finn corrected him, saying they were simply using family connections to get early information on catling infestations before the Jingo Temple officially announced them. Lai nodded and summed it up as taking initiative. He then asked if that was what they planned to do tonight. Finn revealed that they had paid a high price to invite a master from the temple to assist them. That night, she would suppress a level 3 catling infestation, and they would just happen to be there. That way, they could earn merit as well. One of the companions pulled Finn aside. He asked why Lai was included, worried that Lai might steal the credit. They glanced over at Lai, who looked harmless and clueless, still busy eating. The man whispered that even if he personally didn't mind a temporary addition, Zhou Yan and the others would definitely object. As if proving his point, the blonde woman continued scolding Lai while others tried to calm her down. Finn let out a quiet sigh. He thought they were all fools. He didn't bother explaining that while they entered through connections, the easygoing guy sitting with them had actually crushed the exam and taken first place. He had even noticed that their senior, Yichuan, had been subtly watching Lai. It was obvious the higher-ups in the temple had already taken note of him. Finn raised his voice and told everyone to stop arguing. He explained that they were all top performers of their batch, so having more people only meant more strength. There was no downside. The blonde woman leaned forward across the table and grill. She questioned what benefit Lai even brought and why he was allowed to take advantage of them. She continued complaining, telling Finn to keep him in check so they wouldn't be embarrassed. Finn then turned to Lai and told him that a senior would arrive soon for introductions. He warned everyone not to underestimate her just because she was registered in the intermediate division. He explained that she possessed level 4 cat control skills and rare combat strength. The only reason she hadn't advanced further was because she had been ambushed during a previous mission. At that moment, a woman with long red hair walked into the restaurant. Her presence immediately drew attention. People looked at her with admiration, especially since many knew she had already reached the advanced division. One of Finn's companions added that she was a top second-generation official. He joked that her beauty was so overwhelming that a line of suitors could stretch all the way from Daming Palace to Xuanwu Gate. The red-haired woman finally reached their table and crossed her arms. She asked if it really took them this long just to eat a meal. Finn and the others quickly stood up to greet Senior Guikon. One of them nervously said they were ready to leave at any time. But Lai didn't move. He just kept eating. She asked if the waiter had even served the food yet, or if they had just been sitting there talking nonsense. The group gasped when Guikon's eyes landed on Lai. Meanwhile, Lai kept stuffing his face, completely unaware of the tension. A look of disbelief crossed her face when she saw him again. Everyone panicked at his lack of manners. They scolded him and told him to hurry up and greet the senior. Another teammate begged him to stop eating right away. Lai finally looked up, cheeks full of food. He recognized her. Instead of standing, he casually invited her to sit down and eat with them. Senior Guikon looked down at him, clearly annoyed, a shadow falling over her face. No one could believe what they were seeing. Guikon stayed silent. Inside, she felt doomed. Of all people, it had to be him. Her thoughts drifted to her past failure, the level 5 catling incident. She almost wanted to strangle him but forced herself to calm down. Then her expression shifted. She realized something. If he had already defeated Kaizi, then handling another one shouldn't be a problem for him. She decided it would be smarter to build a good relationship first. Her promotion and her return to the advanced division might depend entirely on him. With a forced smile, she said she was a bit hungry, trying to ease the tension. The entire table froze in shock. Finn quickly welcomed her to sit. She sat beside Lai. The blonde woman offered her a drink while nervously asking her not to mind Lai's behavior. The mood instantly turned heavy when Guikon slowly turned her head. She gave the blonde woman a sharp side glance and covered her cup, stopping her from pouring the drink. The blonde woman immediately understood. She was being told to stay out of it. The meal continued. Lai kept eating happily, commenting on how good the food was, and even inviting Guikon to try some. Guikon smirked and said she didn't expect him to act like a mouse, just to eat the cat. The people across the table were completely confused. They kept wondering if the two actually knew each other. At that point, they felt like outsiders in a very strange situation. Night fell over the eastern industrial zone. Guikon and Finn watched an alley from a rooftop. A hooded figure entered a doorway below. One of them asked if they should follow, but Guikon told them not to rush. She explained that cat demons had extremely sharp hearing, so getting too close could expose them. Finn hadn't realized it was that serious. She added that a cat demon's 5 senses were far stronger than a human's. Their smell, sight, and taste were just as sharp as their hearing. She warned that great cat demons, above level 4, could even sense when they were being watched. Guikon noticed Finn spacing out and asked what was wrong. He admitted he was worried about the rookies. In her mind, she pictured them captured and tied up, being dragged away by a sinister, smiling version of Lai. Even so, she told Finn not to worry. With their strength, they should be able to handle a cat menace like this. At the same time, on the other side, Lai was shoved by a teammate who called him a freeloader. The teammate showed clear disdain and told him to stop following them. The others agreed. Lai called them crazy and said he only joined because Finn invited him. Mentioning Finn immediately set off the blonde woman. She crossed her arms and questioned Lai's abilities. She wondered what lies he told Finn to gain his trust. Lai sighed and looked away, already regretting teaming up with people like them. Suddenly, Guikon appeared. She asked about the situation. The blonde woman said everything was normal, but there was a small issue with Lai. She pretended to be concerned and explained that Lai felt unwell and wanted to withdraw from the mission for now. Lai exaggerated his act, pretending to be sick. Finn watched with disbelief. Guikon stared at him with suspicion. She immediately came to a conclusion. She assumed he thought the mission was too easy and was trying to hide his strength again. She silently cursed, thinking it was the same trick as before. In her mind, Lai was once again pretending to be a mouse to eat the cat. She believed his plan was to act weak and sick until everyone was in danger, then step in and shock them all. That thought annoyed her even more. Meanwhile, Lai looked back at her with wide, innocent eyes. He had no idea what was going on. Guikon firmly declared that backing out at the last minute was unacceptable. She warned everyone not to even think about it. She pointed at the group and ordered them to follow Lai's commands. The blonde woman's jaw dropped in shock. Guikon added that, whenever she wasn't present, they were to follow Lai's arrangements without question. The group was stunned. She asked sharply if she needed to repeat herself. Defeated by her pressure, the group lowered their heads and agreed. Meanwhile, Lai just stood there, feeling like no one even asked for his opinion. Everything went quiet. After Guikon left, everyone started venting. They complained that she was way too nice to Lai. They made it clear that even if he was the captain, they had no intention of following him. Lai scratched his head and simply turned away. They felt relieved to finally get rid of him. The blonde woman smirked, convinced that his true colors would show once he ran into trouble alone. The three of them turned their backs and ran deeper into the narrow city streets. They sprinted across the cracked pavement of an alley when the man suddenly noticed something. He told the two women to stop. They halted and looked back at him, confused. He quickly hushed them. They pressed against the wall, hiding. The man whispered that they had found their target. The blonde woman felt bold. With their senior nearby, she thought taking a little risk was fine. At an industrial trading site in the distance, a shady deal was happening under the cover of night. A group of hooded figures stood in chains, their hands bound as they waited in silence. A stout man with a nervous grin lit a cigarette for another man. He called him Brother Chen and presented the batch of goods. Brother Chen, wearing a dark coat and gold-rimmed glasses, took a slow drag while inspecting them. He decided they were acceptable. The hooded figures were revealed to be cat demons. The stout man rubbed his hands nervously and asked for his payment. Brother Chen calmly said the money would be transferred once the goods were taken away. Meanwhile, Finn's teammates peeked through a window and were shocked by what they saw. They realized these were illegal cat hunters, trafficking cat demons. Suddenly, a large shadow loomed over them. A voice asked why they were in such a hurry. The intruder looked down at them and called them a bunch of stinky rats. He swung a heavy bat down with full force. Fear took over instantly. The man in the group rushed forward to shield the blonde woman. A loud thump echoed from the building. Lai casually picked his nose and wondered what that sound was. He pulled out his phone to check the time. It was 23:30. He muttered about how late it was, then wondered if someone was seriously playing baseball at this hour, inside an old building in the Eastern Industrial Zone. The woman was struck hard across the torso by the bat. She coughed up blood from the impact. Then she collapsed to the ground, her body shaking in pain. The attacker stood over them. The brown-haired man and the purple-haired girl were down, bleeding on the cold stone floor. He bent down and grabbed the silk ball cage from the blonde woman's belt. She yelled at him to take his filthy hands off her. She called him low class and told him to stay away. That only made him angrier. With a dark look on his face, the cat demon raised his bat. He was about to bring it down on her. Outside the dark building, someone casually asked if upper-class people were more durable. A van waited nearby as something was being loaded into it. The attacker climbed into a white van parked outside the industrial site. Brother Chen acknowledged his effort. The attacker replied that it was an honor to work for him. Chen said he could rest once the job was done. Inside the van, the three captives sat tied up in the back. Chen looked at them with cold indifference. The blonde woman shouted that her father was the prefect of the capital and her brother was a military governor of Liju. She swore that once she got out alive, they would all pay for this. The two men exchanged a look. One asked Chen how they should handle them. Chen replied that kidnapping alone was already serious, especially with people of that status. Then his expression twisted. He said they might as well kill them to avoid trouble. The three captives froze in horror. The attacker asked if they should do it after leaving the city. Chen shook his head and said there was no need to rush. He explained that they were imperial cat handlers from the Jingo Temple, which meant they likely carried valuable items. Chen picked up the stolen silk ball cage and examined it under the dim light. He mentioned the contract binding the cats to their handlers. Killing the humans directly would weaken the cats. So he made a decision. They would take the captives back first, break the contracts, and deal with them afterward. He admitted he hadn't expected such a valuable catch tonight. The other man added that these three official imperial cats were worth more than an entire van full of wild cats. Chen cut the conversation short and started the engine. The brown-haired man realized that if they were taken away, it was over. These people were professional cat hunters. The blonde woman, shaken, asked what exactly professional cat hunters were. Low-level cat demons are similar to humans, but because of their species, they aren't protected by imperial law. Even though the Empire has recently passed strict laws banning private cat hunting, the profits from exploiting cat demons are massive. The trade has been banned many times, yet it continues to thrive. At the center of it all are professional illegal cat hunters. In other words, the men in this van were hardened criminals. Countless humans and cats die at their hands every year. The captives felt pure fear and despair. Out of nowhere, someone knocked on the van window and asked if anyone was inside. The brown-haired man immediately shouted for help, but a green-haired hunter clamped a hand over his mouth and pulled out a handgun. He shook his head, warning them to stay quiet. The blonde woman watched in horror as her companion was pinned down at gunpoint. Chen, sitting in the front, grabbed his own gun. He lowered the window slightly and asked the person outside what he wanted. The voice outside said a few of his friends were missing and asked if they had seen them. Without hesitation, Chen lied. He said he hadn't seen anyone and that they were asking the wrong person. But Lai peeked through the small opening and told him not to leave just yet. The man in the passenger seat grew uneasy. The brown-haired man realized it was Lai, but instead of relief, he felt frustrated. Why did he come alone instead of calling for backup? Chen grew impatient and asked what else he wanted. Lai scratched his head awkwardly and said that if they happened to see his friends later, they should tell them he said hi. The engine roared, and the van began to move. In the side mirror, Lai could be seen walking away. Inside the van, the captive silently hoped he would realize something was wrong. The blonde woman started crying as a gun was pointed at her, while her friend struggled under the hunter's grip. Then suddenly, Lai appeared at the window again, smiling brightly like nothing was wrong. He said he needed one more thing. Chen, annoyed, asked what it was. Lai leaned closer and pointed at the dashboard. He calmly asked for the cat cages. He added that those were expensive, so it would be better if they were returned to his friends. Everyone froze. The green-haired hunter in the back broke into a cold sweat. The stranger's intent was finally clear. Chen's voice dropped as he gave the order. Attack! In one swift motion, a gun was raised and aimed at Lai. A shot rang out. The impact was brutal. Lai's head snapped back as blood sprayed into the air. His body was thrown away from the moving vehicle. Lai was attacked. He dropped onto his back, blood splattering across the ground. Chen was annoyed by the sudden complication. However, his subordinate noticed something strange and pointed outside. They saw that the pool of blood was black. Chen immediately knew something was wrong. He tried to figure out what was going on. The men stepped out of the vehicle and found a large, dark puddle of ink on the ground. Their leader told them to stay alert and watch closely because an ambush was likely. Meanwhile, Guitian and Lai watched from a nearby rooftop. She asked why he was willing to report to her but refused to make a move himself. Lai said nothing. She wondered if he had discovered the ink marks she placed on everyone so she could track their positions. She wasn't surprised that he knew. Her mind filled with questions about Lai's true abilities. Lai looked uneasy. He explained that his hesitation wasn't because he didn't want to act. Deep down, he lacked confidence because she didn't bring Kaizi. Kaizi chose to stay home. She believed no cat could hurt him because of his strange blood. His ability crushed any cat-related threat. But that power only worked against cats. Against human enemies. He felt he had no chance of winning. Back in the present. Lai tried to save face. He claimed that as a junior, it was better not to steal the spotlight from Senior Guikan during this mission. Senior Chu let out a dismissive huff and turned away, clearly unimpressed by his excuse. She stepped toward the edge of the building. She noted that he at least recognized her as a senior. Then she jumped from the rooftop. She shouted a command to activate Kansheng, cat rule, and long black whips of ink lashed out around her in midair. One of the men on the ground spotted her and alerted the group, but Guikan immediately told him to shut up. They were completely caught off guard by her sudden entrance. One man stuttered and asked if she was some kind of Superman. The blonde woman and her companions cried out in confusion as they struggled to understand what was happening. Guikan burned with rage as she faced the group. Her teeth were clenched, and her eyes narrowed with pure fury. One of the hunters barked an order to take her out, and guns were raised at her from all directions. However, she was not deterred by the weapons. She used her new technique, Human Rule, your old lady destroys everything. And a massive purple-tinged whirlwind erupted from her movement, tearing through the air and the ground around the van. The men were overwhelmed by the sheer force of the storm. They asked what that thing was. The green-haired hunter was blasted away. He shouted that she was no longer human. Guikan stood atop a van. Too bad for those men, she was in a foul mood. She told them to start being honest. Nearby, Chen and the man from the passenger seat earlier crouched in the shadows. The man said the woman looked tough to deal with. Chen was annoyed by the interference from people of Jingguo Temple. Chen noticed a green jade tag hanging from her waist. He noted that intermediate cat masters with green tags usually lacked this level of strength. He was confused by the power she showed. He noticed the green-haired man hiding behind the van with his gun ready. So, they stepped out of hiding and told her the situation was just a misunderstanding. They claimed they were good citizens who got nervous in the dark. She didn't believe him. She glanced at the green-haired man and asked if carrying a gun and hurting people in the middle of the night counted as being a good citizen. The green-haired man froze, so Chen yelled at him to hurry up and shoot. He quickly raised his weapon and fired. Guikan moved with incredible speed. The gunman shouted that she was too fast to track. She jumped off the van and swung a dark whip-like tether at him. The black cord wrapped around his neck. The man struggled to break free. He was quickly overwhelmed as the dark substance coiled around his entire body. Within seconds, he was sealed inside a towering pillar of black ink. She told him to be honest, but since they lied, she asked if they were deaf. His underling asked Brother Chen why this woman was stronger than the others. Chen explained that ranks in Jingo Temple were divided by strength. With a crazed look, the man became curious about who was stronger between him and her. Chen told him to go out and find out. He threw off his coat and revealed a large robotic left arm. He gave the order to attack. His companion transformed into a large cat. The cat expected the woman from Jingo Temple to entertain him a little longer. Guikan admitted she didn't expect that, and she acknowledged that the men actually had some skill. Chen told her to stop making things difficult and just let them go. She asked if they really thought they were worthy of her cooperation. Chen dropped the polite act. Since that was the case, there was nothing left to say. He raised a high-tech pistol with his mechanical arm, and the weapon charged with bright blue electricity. Guitan was not intimidated by the flashy display. She said that having a gun didn't make him impressive, but to her surprise, the blast curved around and struck her shoulder, tearing through her sleeve and leaving a trail of electric blue sparks. She noticed the flickering blue glow, like crackling electricity. Suddenly, the cat beast declared the use of a cat rule. Thunder blast! Electricity surged through her. She let out a sharp scream as the attack slammed her to the ground. She lost consciousness. Her body lay on the pavement, smoke rising from it, but unexpectedly, the body dissolved into ink. The white cat beast and Chen stood over her fallen form. Chen was annoyed that it was that ink again. The cat remarked that this kind of transformation rule was the hardest to deal with. From around a corner, Guikan watched. She wondered if those people were using sorcery warheads. Guikan found it strange that they had controlled weapons. She wondered how they ended up in the hands of civilians. Since humans and cat demons formed a partnership, it led to the development of various technologies powered by sorcery. Special weapons infused with sorcery effects were created during this era. High-tech firearms, grenades, and injectors were examples of this fusion. It was noted that with these tools, ordinary humans could use abilities that were once unique to cat demons. Brother Chen found her. He asked if she was willing to let them go now. She shot back that illegally making and using controlled weapons was a serious crime. She realized she should thank them for turning her third-class merit into a second-class merit. Chen warned her not to blame him for being ruthless. She dashed out from behind the pillar, and several shots were fired at her. Chen mocked her, asking if she was trying to run. Anxiety crept in as she dodged the bullets. She wondered why Lai still wasn't moving. She thought he might be slacking off again. At the same time, in the distance, Lai and Finn hid behind the white van. Finn told him to stay quiet so they wouldn't be found. Lai snapped back, telling him to stop nagging because he already knew. The man slid the van door open with a loud click. Finn panicked at the noise. Lai froze when he looked inside. He was left speechless. Finn asked what was wrong and peeked through the gap, but he stopped mid-sentence when he saw what was inside. One captive let out a shaky breath and thanked them. The cat women inside looked well-built. Both men instantly got nosebleeds at the same time. Finn snapped out of his trance and shouted at him to stop standing around and hurry up to free the captives. Lai immediately agreed as he snapped back to his senses. The captives were guided out of the vehicle and into the safety of the night. As they ran, one of the hooded cat women felt confused. She looked at Lai and wondered why a man who was clearly human was saving them. She glanced back at him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. He began unlocking the shackles from one of the gray-haired cats. She thanked him and promised to repay him. Lai said it was nothing and told her not to worry about it. In a sudden show of affection, the cat-like woman leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. She softly whispered, "Grazie," as a final thank you before leaving. Her feet lightly tapped the ground as she ran off. Lai touched his cheek, stunned by her sudden affection. He blushed and stared after the foreign cat with a wide grin. The blonde woman snapped at him, called him a pervert, and told him to stop staring. Her brows tightened in frustration. She told him to hurry up and help them escape. Lai asked why they were beaten so badly. The woman explained that they were ambushed by cat masters from the cat hunters. He looked surprised and confirmed that the enemy's main force was a cat. He gave a thumbs up and told her not to worry because he would step in since the enemy was just a cat. The woman stared at him in confusion. Meanwhile, Chen pointed his gun at Guikan. He warned her that she had nowhere left to run. Chen suddenly froze in shock. Guikan stepped out and held several glowing purple charms between her fingers. She warned him that he should be the one running. Chen looked up at her with fear as he tightened his grip on the gun. Guikan saw this as the perfect chance to strike. She unleashed her cat rule, ink-shooting Fox Mountain. Ribbons of black ink swirled around her body. Chen knew his situation was getting worse. Suddenly, Baji, his cat demon, stepped in and blocked the attack. The ink whips dug into his body, tearing into his flesh. Blood sprayed from the wounds. Chen grew worried. Baji told him to retreat at once because the ink was poisonous. Gichan flung her ink upward with great force. She noted that Chen's bond with his cat demon was quite strong. She decided to test that bond again. Baji warned Chen that something was coming from above. Then sharp spears of black ink rained down toward them. The two barely managed to dodge in time. Chen knew he couldn't keep taking hits like this. He ordered Baji to attack while he aimed his gun at her. In an instant, a whip of ink struck his hand and knocked the gun away. The weapon hit the ground with a sharp clatter. Gichan stood right in front of them. She commented on how touching they looked, saying someone might even think she was the villain. But it didn't matter. Baji admitted they were no match for her and asked Chen what they should do. Chen questioned whether she was really an intermediate imperial cat handler because she was too difficult to handle. He glanced back at the curse-modified gun. He realized that even with it, they still couldn't match her power. He weighed his options and decided it wasn't worth continuing the fight. He looked toward the railroad crossing sign. Gichan mocked them, asking if they had figured out how to handle her next attack. Then she opened her hand, and a small brick of ink pulsed with energy. Ribbons of ink shot forward, chasing after the fleeing pair. Gichan suddenly paused when she sensed something. A train burst into view, rushing straight toward them. She stayed still and watched it happen. Chen froze in shock. Luckily, Baji lunged at him and dragged him away. They tumbled to the ground as they barely made it to the other side. Baji asked if he was okay. Chen, still staring at the train, told him they had to keep running. He knew they couldn't beat her. On the other side, Gichan stood close to the passing train and clicked her tongue. She then looked back at the curse-modified firearm lying on the ground. A thought crossed her mind, and a sly smile formed on her face. The train sped past behind Chen and Baji. Baji felt pity for the cat demon suffering that night. Chen, however, told him not to think about it. He said that staying alive mattered more. He had already concluded that Gichan's imperial cat was at least level 4 or higher. He thought that this was expected from Jingguo Temple, and that it was simply bad luck to run into someone like her. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed behind them. Chen asked Baji if he heard it. Baji replied that it sounded like a gunshot. Chen didn't expect that. In the next instant, a whip of black ink shot through the air and pierced his thigh. Blood burst from the wound. He fell onto his back and screamed in pain as he grabbed his leg with both hands. Baji rushed toward him instantly. Chen shouted for him not to come any closer. He yelled at Baji to leave right now. Baji hesitated. He called out to Brother Chen with a heavy voice. Chen insisted that he had to run immediately. He pointed out that he was no match for that woman's cat rule. He told Baji not to worry about him. Chen continued, saying that these people specialized in dealing with cat demons. He warned that Baji must never fall into their hands. As the last carriage of the train passed, a heavy silence settled around Chen. Gichan's voice broke through it as she mocked him, asking why he wasn't running anymore. He glared at her. With a grin, Gichan raised the gun with both hands and aimed at him. She said the game of cat and mouse wasn't over yet, and now, she was the cat. She told him not to worry, because she wouldn't let the mouse, him, die too early. But it was a shame that his cat had abandoned him. Her brows tightened as she said, a cat that betrays its master has no place anywhere. She added that his cat wasn't as reliable as his gun, since the gun wouldn't abandon him and run away. With the last of his strength, he struggled to stand. One leg first, then the other. When he finally stood, his shoulders stiffened as he held himself up. He stayed silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, he turned around with his hands clasped together. His cool, arrogant attitude completely disappeared. Instead, a sheepish smile spread across his face. Hoping for her pity, he begged her to spare him, saying his cat demon had abandoned him. He piled on cringy praise and suggested she wouldn't want to see him spend his remaining years alone in the prison of Jingguo Temple. Gichan looked uncomfortable. He even offered his gun as a sign of respect. He added that a smart person understands the situation, as he pleaded for her mercy. Annoyed, Gichan struck his face with the gun and told him to stop acting. Blood burst from his mouth as he staggered back. Her expression darkened as she looked down at him and cocked the gun. She then said that people like him, the trash of society, were better off dead. Chen told her not to be so certain. He said anything could be negotiated as long as the price was right. Since she was young, he knew she needed merit. He offered to give her intelligence on the 4 major civilian armed groups in Lizhu, including targets that Jingguo Temple had been searching for. He said he would give her the information if she let him go. But if she chose to kill him, he would accept it without complaint. Frustrated, Gichan let out a sharp breath as her brows tightened. Suddenly, a voice cut through the tension and called out to them. Both she and Chen turned toward the source of the voice. The voice asked if everything was settled. It was from Lai, and he added that Gichan truly lived up to her reputation. He said he rushed over to help, but she didn't need it. She asked if he had handled things on his end. He confidently said yes. He told her she could trust him to take care of things, but she doubted him since he had protected Kaisi earlier. Lai argued that it was different. He said guiding someone toward good shouldn't count as shielding them. He was suddenly cut off when a massive beast grabbed him. Guichen could only watch in shock. It was Baji. Baji held Lai hostage. He demanded that she release Chen or he would kill Lai. Chen was relieved to see him and said he truly lived up to his reputation. Unfazed, Guichen stared at them in silence. Baji shouted at her to stop stalling. Lai looked at the beast with narrowed eyes. Even after seeing him, Lai wanted to be sure, so he asked Baji if he was really a cat. A grin spread across his face. He then grabbed Baji's claws. With force, he pierced his own palm using them. Blood dripped from his hand onto the beast's fingers. Confused, Baji pulled his arm back. His eyes widened in shock. Lai looked at him with glowing eyes and a sly smile, apologizing in advance. He brought his 3 fingers together. He snapped. Suddenly, energy surged through Baji's eyes, and a twisted image of Lai reflected inside them. Horrified, the beast grabbed his head in panic. A chilling voice echoed, declaring that Baji should be executed. Lai's face darkened as bright energy burned around him. He slammed his open palm down, forcing Baji to his knees. In the industrial area, the group finally arrived at the scene. The blonde woman and Finn asked what had happened. Baji and Chen knelt before them, begging for their lives. The blonde woman recognized Chen, cursed him, and said he got what he deserved. Lai nodded in agreement. Chen realized they wanted to catch him in the act. The brown-haired man said he must be severely punished for targeting the people of Jingo Temple. Lai nodded again. Chen admitted their mistake and said they failed to recognize the authority of someone great. He begged for another chance. Annoyed, Finn said that was just wishful thinking. Lai agreed again. Lai stated that illegal cat hunting was a serious crime, made worse by illegally possessing firearms. Chen and Baji lowered their heads to the ground. Lai then grabbed Chen by the collar. He asked if he really expected them to give him another chance. He pressed further, asking who would give the enslaved and trafficked cats a second chance. Defeated, Chen told them to do whatever they wanted with him. His expression fell as he continued, saying they weren't the main culprits. He added that many others were involved. Lai tightened his grip and leaned in, asking if he had any information about them. Chen's eyes widened in shock. Finn and the others behind them were left stunned. Lai told him to confess, saying that for every piece of information he gave, his sentence would be reduced by 3 years, 1 month later. It was the day of the assessment. People gathered in a large hall. One man asked his seatmate about his results. The other man replied that he ranked 330th. Chief Li presented the first monthly assessment results for the new batch of Imperial cat handlers. A massive, green screen displayed the rankings. He continued, saying that out of the 1,100 newly promoted handlers, only 30% had passed the performance assessment. In other words, 7 out of 10 were disqualified. A large section of the screen turned red, showing the failed ranks. Chief Li announced that all handlers ranked below 330th must return their waste tokens and not report back the next day. The candidates reacted with frustration and disappointment. He added that the remaining handlers would keep their scores and be tested again next month. The man ranked 333rd let out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the man beside him sat in shock after seeing his rank at 331st. The chief continued and announced that only 33 people achieved excellent results. He added that promotion applications require 3 consecutive months of excellence. The men ranked 17th and 18th sat proudly with their cats resting on their laps. He then revealed that one special team had been selected for recognition. This small team had earned many merits throughout the month. The crowd reacted in shock since they were newcomers who had already gained multiple merits. It was said that the team destroyed 6 cat hunting gangs. They also secured dozens of infestation sites. Some people in the crowd shouted that the team must be cheating. With special approval from headquarters, a commendation was awarded to the team members. On top of that, they were allowed to participate in the intermediate promotion assessment at the end of the year. An angry green-haired man sat in the crowd and muttered complaints. He accused Lai of being a traitor for working with a group of rich students. Lai casually raised his middle finger at him. He smirked and suggested the man simply wasn't working hard enough. Finn waved and invited Lai to sit beside him. The blonde woman, Yan, looked annoyed at his presence. She questioned why he was allowed to sit with them. Their brown-haired friend agreed with her. The purple-haired woman pointed out that Lai's quick thinking had saved the group. Yan disagreed and argued that they were only caught because of him. Once again, the brown-haired man sided with Yan. The purple-haired woman stepped in to calm things down. She invited everyone to a banquet at her house. It was a party hosted by her father to show his gratitude. She told Lai to come as well. since he was the main reason they were saved. Yan remarked that even a mere kid was allowed into General Lu's mansion. Finn warned her to watch her words since General Lu was the host. He felt they shouldn't meddle in other people's affairs. Lai ignored their argument and casually picked his nose like nothing was happening. The assessment ended, and the crowd was told to leave in an orderly manner. Outside, a large crowd gathered near the entrance. Lai noticed the commotion, and Finn suggested they go take a look. A sleek motorcycle was parked in front of the building. It was Guikan. She wore sunglasses and leaned against her bike. The onlookers admired her. Yan approached her with a polite smile. She asked what brought the senior there that day. Guishan lowered her glasses and told her to call Lai because she had something to discuss with him. Yan felt nervous but quickly agreed. Lai turned to his companions and apologized, saying he had to leave first. Finn said it was fine and promised to send a ride to pick him up before the banquet. Meanwhile, Yan watched Lai and her senior interact, and she felt jealous. Yan asked Gikan what she needed. Lai sounded annoyed since it was the weekend. Gikan told him to stop talking nonsense and ordered him to get on the motorcycle right away. Moments later, the engine roared, and they sped away from the academy. The group watched as the motorcycle disappeared into the distance. The brown-haired man asked Yan if she thought the two already knew each other. Yan grew frustrated and told him to stop saying nonsense. The purple-haired girl commented that the situation seemed suspicious. Nearby, Finn found Lai more interesting than before. They went to a coffee shop in the suburbs of Lizhu City. Guichan dropped a pair of cuffs onto the table with a thud. Confused, Lai asked what they were. Guichan brought up their previous encounter with a group of cat hunters. She revealed that an investigation had been done on the restraint equipment they used. She explained that the devices used material technology unique to the military. Their secrecy level was the same as military weapons. She pointed out that such controlled items were not supposed to enter the private market. Lai asked if she planned to keep investigating. She said there was no reason not to, especially if it could lead to a major merit. Lai realized she wasn't even considering the risks. He suggested that a case of this scale might be too much for a newcomer like him. At that point, he was just earning the minimum allowance of 800 after finishing his internship. Guikan grew annoyed that he was still holding back information. She said she had already made Li Chen confess about the other cat hunters and their hideouts. He argued that the next steps of the case shouldn't involve a junior handler like him. He laughed it off and said his job was done after the interrogation. She asked if he still remembered the first time they met. Confused, he asked why that even mattered. Guikan placed a camera on the table and said that Jingguo Temple had surveyed the scene. They found a damaged device. Inside it was a photo of a high-level cat afflicted named Kaizi. More importantly, they also found a blood sample from a certain junior cat exorcist. Lai stared at the camera, growing nervous as sweat formed on his cheek. She asked if he wanted his secret exposed. She said that for Jingguo Temple, someone who could suppress cat demons across different ranks was extremely valuable. She added that if they discovered his ability, no one could predict how they would treat him. She listed possible outcomes like being kept in captivity and used like a milk cow for blood, or worse, turned into a test subject. A sly smile spread across her face. That was enough to break him. Lai said she didn't need to say anything more. He promised he wouldn't refuse. However, he had one small request before agreeing. She told him to say it. Since she was a former high-ranking cat exorcist, she must know many things. At an outdoor training ground under a clear sky, Guikan asked why he suddenly wanted to learn. She thought to herself that his strength was already enough to handle a level 5 cat demon. Her brows furrowed as she wondered what the point of learning this was. Lai pulled out an MP443, a modified weapon. He explained that there were problems beyond just the cat afflicted. She remarked that he wasn't completely stupid, after all. Earlier, Chen had given him the gun as a reward. Lai said that in his line of work, he would inevitably face enemies that weren't cats. She realized that Lai wanted to learn cursed firearms, so he wouldn't leave evidence for Jingguo Temple. He coughed lightly and said some things were better left understood without saying. He mentioned that after the last incident, he planned to find other ways to fight. He complained that the firearm was hard to use. Nothing happened when he pulled the trigger. She was shocked by what he said. She shouted that she had finally caught him in a lie. She lectured him about how cursed weapons had been widely used for years. She questioned how he didn't even know the basic principle. She realized that something strange about him was now confirmed. Lai grew nervous. She explained that cursed weapons rely on the user's spiritual energy to activate the cat demon curse engraved inside them. The trigger wasn't just for show. This was basic knowledge that even a child would understand. She added that many types of guns and cannons existed, but there were also true, great power weapons. Since Lai didn't know this, she compared him to someone from ancient times who had never seen a car or a phone. She leaned in with a sharp look and asked if he was actually from another era. Lai broke into a cold sweat. Stammering, he asked her to let him explain. Lai felt nervous. He said he was just a country bumpkin who didn't understand the gadgets used by big city people. Deep down, he knew his real situation couldn't be revealed. Guikan was suspicious. No one would believe such an excuse. Suddenly, her eyes widened as something clicked. An image of Lai as a powerful and dangerous figure formed in her mind. Thinking about it that way, his explanation strangely started to make sense. Lai let out an awkward laugh. Guikan recalled her old man's words. She remembered that many ancient families lived in seclusion beyond the temple. Most of them inherited secret techniques that rivaled the power of cat demon laws. She wondered if the technique he used to defeat the level 5 cat disaster was actually a hidden family art. She said that his desire to hide his uniqueness from Jingo Temple finally made sense. Lai looked confused, wondering what she was imagining now. She smiled and patted his shoulder, assuring him that she understood everything. With confidence, she promised to keep his secret. They moved to an open training ground marked with red flags. Since he had never used curse-modified weapons before, she decided to teach him from the basics. She explained that cat demons possessed a type of power called demon power. Cat demons were ranked from level 1 to level 5. These levels matched the severity of cat disasters. Controlling this power came naturally to cat demons, but humans struggled to handle strong demon power directly. She then held up a high-tech firearm and explained that curse-modified weapons were created by the Empire to solve this problem. She took out an orb and told Lai that an Imperial cat only needed to channel demon power into the weapon for a human to use it. She held Sheng in her arms as dark energy flowed into the gun. The demon power was then turned into an attack through engraved incantations. She aimed the weapon at a pile of tires, and at first, nothing seemed to happen. Then a whip of dark ink burst from the gun and pierced through the target. Lai was shocked. The shot came from Sheng's ink play law being infused into the weapon. She handed Sheng to Lai so he could try it himself. Sheng jumped onto Lai's shoulder as he focused on channeling the power into the weapon and took aim. Guchan reminded him that he only needed to think about it and didn't have to say anything out loud. He raised the cursed firearm as dark, wispy energy gathered around the barrel. She instructed him to inject the law power first, then aim. She added that he should imagine the ink wrapping around the bullet as it fired. He began to sweat under the pressure and finally pulled the trigger. A bright flash burst from the gun as the shot fired. The projectile shot across the training ground like dark lightning. It curved through the air. It hit the target with immense force, blasting it into small wooden pieces. Both of them were stunned. He stared at the weapon in his hands, surprised at how simple it felt. Guikan watched him as Sheng jumped back to her shoulder. She was shocked that he learned to use a cursed weapon so quickly when it took her more than half a month to do the same. She asked him why he was just standing there. Lai looked confused and said he couldn't hear her. Suddenly, blood burst from his nose. His eyes rolled back. Then he collapsed face first onto the ground. She didn't expect him to drop after firing just one shot. Later, they arrived at Lai's residence. Guikan told him to take better care of himself. She said cat handlers used chi to control their cats, and she had never seen someone as chi deficient as him. He felt insulted. He tried to comfort himself and said everyone has a first time. He pointed out that her imperial cat was no ordinary breed. She admitted that it was true. Lai noticed her expression and grew frustrated. He wondered if she was secretly laughing at him. Guichan told him to get some rest. She said she hoped he would last longer next time she called him and not collapse after just one shot. Finn sat in his car and watched them. He was completely shocked by what he heard. He thought about the long line of marriage proposals at the left minister's residence that stretched all the way to Xuanwu Gate. Yet Guichan's marriage was still not arranged. A conclusion slowly formed in his mind. That night, at General Lu's mansion, tea was poured into a small green cup. A brown-haired man, one of Finn's friends, flirted with a few women. The Catwoman leaned closer and used her chopsticks to feed him a piece of food. His face turned red as he looked at her. He stared at her pose and said, "The food tasted amazing." Jan watched the man and the cat servant from a distance. She looked annoyed. She warned him to get a grip because he was about to start drooling. The man realized he had gone too far and quickly wiped his mouth. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Yan said all men were the same. But deep down, she knew it was hard to avoid, because cat servants were much rarer than normal maids. She noted that the number of cat servants showed the host's status at a banquet. Meanwhile, the man kept playing with the servant and called her cute. A male cat servant offered her a drink. These servants were used by nobles to show off their status. She took the cup and praised the unique style of General Lu's mansion. The servant felt flattered. Suddenly, she pointed across the room in annoyance and asked if something could be done about that rude guy. She was talking about Lai, who was loudly slurping his noodles. Lai looked up with food still on his face. She asked if he could at least care about his image. At the head table, a powerful man sat surrounded by cat-eared servants, quietly watching the banquet. She continued, saying that being at the same banquet as Lai was embarrassing. She frowned in confusion when he grabbed a whole chicken and kept eating. He said the host hadn't complained, so she had no right to tell him what to do. He reminded her he wasn't eating her family's food. Yan snapped at him and told him not to push his luck. At the head of the long table, a young man leaned in and whispered something to General Liu. After the brief exchange, the general stood up and left the banquet. Yan claimed that even General Liu couldn't stand Lai's behavior anymore. The purple-haired woman tried to calm everyone down. She said it was a small matter and not worth arguing over. Yan wasn't convinced and asked if she was sure. The purple-haired woman explained that the general left because someone in the mansion was seriously ill, so he wasn't in the mood to stay at the banquet. At another table, Finn asked if the sick person was an elder. The purple-haired woman explained that the patient was an old comrade from her father's time in the army. Since the patient was a cat demon, it was hard to find a suitable doctor. Finn understood. He pointed out that humans and cats follow different paths, so very few doctors studied how to treat cat demons. The purple-haired woman said her father had heard of a divine doctor named Li in the palace. This doctor specialized in such cases and had treated priests at Jingo Temple. However, all attempts to visit him had failed. Yan asked if she meant the imperial physician, Li Zhao. The purple-haired woman was surprised and asked if she knew him. With a nervous smile, Yan revealed that Uncle Li had been kidnapped by her brother not long ago. He was taken to their house just to drink. The purple-haired woman stood up in shock. She asked if they should ask Governor Zhou to step in and help. Yan said there was no need to bother him. She bragged that her own influence carried more weight than her brother's. An elderly man with white hair and a monocle arrived at the residence. It was the divine Dr. Li. The purple-haired woman begged him to treat the patient and said they would be forever grateful. Dr. Li looked at Yan with clear annoyance. He asked if she hadn't dragged him there just to drink tea and sober up. She replied that once Uncle Li showed his skills, they could still sit down and enjoy tea afterward. Dr. Li entered the house and remarked that Yan was just like her brother, always causing trouble for others. He walked past Lai, who was casually petting a cat servant. He kept walking. Eventually, he stopped in front of a landscape scroll and let out a heavy sigh. Yan asked why Uncle Li looked so troubled and if the situation was serious. Dr. Li lowered his gaze and spoke solemnly. He described the symptoms as jaundice and ascites, along with vomiting and a high fever, and said there was no point in continuing treatment. Lai asked why the condition couldn't be treated. The cat servant Lai was petting rested her head on the table. He stroked her head and asked why Dr. Li made it sound so serious when it was just FIP, a common illness. The purple-haired woman stared in shock. Dr. Li looked amused while Yan grew annoyed that Lai had interrupted. He walked over and asked Lai if he also knew how to treat cats. Lai's old habits kicked in, and he immediately regretted speaking. He said he had studied a little, raised a few, and treated a few. The doctor narrowed his eyes in suspicion. He said the boy didn't sound like someone who only knew a little. Lai replied that it depended on who he was being compared to. He added that for a minor illness like FIP, he wouldn't say treatment was pointless. Dr. Li snapped and called him arrogant. He argued that the cat demon was too far gone to be saved. He said feline illnesses were like a plague and that he had practiced medicine for 30 years. He asked if the boy thought he was a fraud. Lai started getting irritated with the old man. Yan smirked and teased Lai for being scolded. He ignored her and stood up, still petting the cat's head. Then he said he was only stating facts. He also questioned how someone could be called a divine doctor if they couldn't accept a small difference in opinion. Yan shouted that he was talking nonsense, but Dr. Li raised a hand to stop her. He then said that in all his years of practice, he had never seen a grandmaster who specialized in treating cat demons. Yan added that cat plagues were widespread. She explained that everyone avoided them, so no one was willing to treat them. Lai asked the servants if no one treated domestic cats when they got sick. The cat servant replied that they were only lowly slaves and not worthy of receiving medicine. Yan told Lai to hurry up and apologize to Dr. Li. She pointed out that Dr. Li was already old and warned him not to anger the man any further. Dr. Li turned his back and prepared to leave. Lai watched him go and asked if he really had no intention of saving the patient anymore. Since he was about to leave like that, Lai suggested that he let him try treating the patient instead. Dr. Li stopped in his tracks and turned back with a surprised look. Lai questioned his motives, asking if the patient would be denied a chance to live just so he could protect his reputation. Yan was about to speak, but a hand rested on her shoulder. A tall, bearded man stepped forward with a smile. It was Guard General Liu Jiang. He asked who the young man was, noting that he seemed to have quite a bit of spirit. The purple-haired woman bowed respectfully and addressed him as father. She explained that the young man was her comrade from Jingo Temple. She added that Lai was the one who had saved her life during a previous mission. The general sized Lai up and said his attitude reminded him of his younger days. He asked which capital city this rising talent came from. His daughter blushed and said Lai's background was quite ordinary compared to theirs. General Lu firmly stated that a humble origin was nothing to be ashamed of. Suddenly, Finn leaned in and whispered to the general. He told him not to underestimate Lai because he might become the future live-in son-in-law of the Chu family. General Lu was stunned. He asked if it was the famous Chu family from the capital. Finn confirmed it. He added that he had seen Gui Khan teasing Lai earlier that evening. The general's eyes widened as Finn nodded with a serious look. General Lu burst into laughter. He praised the young man as impressive and talented. He said very few people could catch Old Man Chu's attention. Lai looked flustered and quickly tried to deny it, asking Finn to stop spreading rumors. But the general was already convinced. He believed that anyone trusted by Old Man Chu couldn't be ordinary. He then brought the topic back to the treatment mentioned earlier. He asked Lai how confident he was in handling the case. Lai sighed and rubbed his forehead, clearly annoyed. He thought it might be better to drop the issue. Then he spoke and explained the illness. He said that peritonitis wasn't incurable, but it spread easily among cats. Early signs included slight fever and muscle tremors. Symptoms like vomiting and eye discoloration were often caused by incorrect treatment. The general and the purple-haired woman were shocked. She urged her father to let Lai try. After thinking it over, General Lu agreed. He invited Lai into the inner room to discuss the details and asked the other guests to wait for a moment. The group walked along an open corridor as night settled in. Lai complained to himself, annoyed that what was supposed to be a simple meal had turned into all this trouble. He was brought into a private room and asked to sit. The purple-haired woman poured tea as the mood grew serious. Lai felt like he was in a job interview and wondered how things escalated so fast. General Lu revealed that the patient was actually a cat demon who had gone through life and death with him, so he had to be careful. He said that years ago there was a major conflict between humans and cats in the imperial court. At that time, being a different species was seen as a great injustice. He described his friend as a quiet cat who never fought for status. Even with many achievements, the cat demon still lived in poverty among commoners. The general couldn't bear to see his old friend suffer, so he brought him into the manor. He lowered his head with regret and admitted he never expected his friend to become this sick. Lai looked at him with concern. General Lu seemed deeply troubled. Lai didn't understand why he was so serious about an illness that wasn't fatal. He suggested they stop wasting time talking and asked to see the patient right away. His sudden confidence surprised both the general and his daughter. General Lu solemnly entrusted his old comrade's life to the young man. Lai assured him it was just an infectious disease. He then listed the medicines needed and asked someone to buy them. The general called out to his daughter, the purple-haired woman, A Jin, and told her to go to the medicine storehouse immediately. He urged her to hurry and not waste time. She gave a confident nod and said she would go right away. The moon rose high over the quiet manor, and the stars shone brightly in the night sky. Inside a dimly lit room, Lai sat by the bedside wearing a white medical mask for protection. The orange cat demon lay still under a white blanket. Lai picked up a syringe and carefully checked the needle. He gently inserted it into the cat's fur and injected the medicine. General Lu stood at the doorway, watching with a tense expression. He finally asked how the situation was. Lai let out a sigh, realizing he had somehow returned to his old profession after all his wandering. With a smirk, he thought this line of work had great potential in this world. A dream of becoming a divine veterinarian filled his mind. In his imagination, beautiful catwomen surrounded him. He flushed as the fantasy played out. General Lu snapped him back to reality by asking if something was wrong since he had gone quiet. Lai replied that everything was fine. He told the general that the diagnosis and treatment were complete. He said the medicine would work quickly and suggested checking the patient's temperature later to see if the fever had gone down. The clock on the wall ticked as time passed. Dr. Lee carefully examined the patient with a thermometer. He was shocked, which made Yan ask if that kid had messed everything up. Dr. Lee said the patient's temperature had returned to normal and the breathing was stable. These were clear signs that the inflammation was fading. He predicted a full recovery within 3 days. Everyone was stunned by the result. Yan still doubted it, but Dr. Lee pointed out that he had practiced medicine for decades. He said his eyes weren't so bad that he couldn't see the truth. He glanced at the slightly open door with deep curiosity. Dr. Lee adjusted his robe and stepped inside again. He approached Lai and made a rather bold request. He asked if the medicine was developed by Lai himself. Lai said it was just a simple anti-inflammatory drug. He added that the formula wasn't complicated at all. Dr. Lee hesitated. Lai suddenly panicked and cut him off, shouting that he wasn't taking any disciples. The old man broke into a sweat and quickly explained that wasn't his intention. He bowed respectfully and apologized for overstepping. He admitted that he only wanted to ask for the prescription used in the treatment. Lai asked why he wanted it. Dr. Lee explained that after many years of practice, he had never seen a medicine work this effectively, so he humbly asked for this favor. Lai simply smiled. He knew the doctor wanted the formula to help others. Because of that, he had no issue sharing it. He wrote down the prescription. He handed the paper to Dr. Lee and instructed him to use 1 injection per day. He added that the dosage could be reduced and changed to oral medicine once the swelling went down. Dr. Lee couldn't believe the formula was being given so easily. Lai said that peritonitis wasn't a serious illness. He hoped that in the future, the doctor wouldn't tell people to give up on treatment so quickly. Suddenly, a hand rested on his shoulder. General Lu stepped forward with a grateful smile. He suggested that Lai stay the night at the manor. He said he wanted to host him properly since his kindness couldn't be repaid with words. Lai politely declined. The general looked a bit disappointed and asked if the manor didn't suit his taste. Lai explained that he had other matters to handle, so it wasn't convenient for him to stay. He added that several little ancestors were waiting for him at home and hadn't been fed yet. He worried they might turn his house upside down if he came back late. General Lu watched him with a gentle smile. He thought the young man had a warm, home-loving nature, unlike Old Man Chu. He decided not to insist. He offered to have 2 cat-eared servants escort Lai out and promised to hold another banquet in a few days to show his gratitude. Lai politely refused again. He said there was no need for so much trouble and that he could leave on his own. General Lu remarked that he was young, capable, and had a good character. He then ordered the guards to open the gates and see the guest off. The guards strained as they pushed the massive red doors. The iron-studded gates creaked as they slowly opened. A young man on the street looked up in shock at the sound. He asked if the main gate of the general's manor had actually opened. A woman nearby covered her mouth in surprise. She said the gates hadn't opened in 2 or 3 years. They wondered which young talent was being honored this time. The people of Liju all knew the rule of General Lu Jiang's manor. The main gate was never opened casually. It was only used when someone worthy was personally welcomed or escorted by the general himself. The last time it opened was 3 years ago. Back then, the daughter of the left prime minister had visited with her father. Now, the main gate opened once again. Everyone understood what that meant. The guards stood straight as the massive doors fully opened. General Lu Jiang walked beside Lai and gestured toward the exit. Together, they passed through the grand entrance under the watchful eyes of the staff. Lai waved goodbye from the window of a white car as it pulled away. General Lu and A Jin stood by the manor gates and watched the car disappear into the night. Inside the car, Lai and Yan both let out a long sigh of relief. He turned to her and said he hoped he didn't embarrass himself this time. Yan looked away with a cold expression and asked why he acted so smug. Still, she admitted he was better than most since he rejected the escort of the cat servants. The brown-haired man in the passenger seat glanced back curiously. He asked why Lai refused the escort of the 2 cat maids and wondered if he didn't like them. Lai looked confused and asked if there was another meaning. The question left Finn, Yan, and the brown-haired man all confused. Lai asked what was wrong. Yan's face turned red as she explained that nobles openly gifting cat demon maids would violate imperial law. She stopped there, leaving the rest unsaid. Their brown-haired friend continued, explaining that people usually spoke in more subtle ways. He said there was an unspoken understanding among the elite. Lai was confused at first. As he slowly understood, his face turned red. The moment it clicked, he leaned out the window and shouted for the driver to stop, saying he still had something important to discuss with the general. Yan pulled him back inside and told him to shut up because he was embarrassing them. The car kept moving. Back at the manor, the general watched the car disappear into the distance. He thought Lai was still waving goodbye even from far away. He commented on how polite the young man was. General Lu praised Lai's steady personality and outstanding ability. He sighed that young people like him were becoming rare. Ajin smiled and agreed, saying Lai's character and skills were both top tier. The general then looked at his daughter and suggested she dress up like the girl from the Chu family. He wanted her to learn from her so he could find a good son-in-law. She stuck out her tongue and refused, saying she wouldn't be used to repay his favors. He told her to get some rest. He ordered her to accompany him to the capital the next day because he wanted to see where Old Man Q found such an impressive son-in-law. A few days passed. It was early morning at Chengde Gate. Modern soldiers in camouflage marched through the ancient gate. They carried heavy rifles and wore tactical helmets. A crowd gathered behind a yellow barrier. One man raised his phone to record the scene. Then everything came to a stop. One man in the crowd asked why all 9 gates were sealed. He wondered if something major was happening. Another person behind him was surprised that he didn't know. The sealing of the 9 gates was a grand signal that a high-ranking official was returning to the capital. It showed the court's respect, and it also prevented local armies from entering the city and causing unrest. Since the dynasty valued military power, this honor was reserved for generals or military governors. A convoy of black luxury cars drove through the massive stone archway. People along the street watched the vehicles pass. A-jin sat inside one of the cars with her father. She asked how they should arrange their visit to the capital. General Liu decided they would go to the left chancellor's manor first to visit an old friend. She was surprised by this and asked about the situation at the palace. He brushed off the urgency of palace matters. He said they would visit Old Man Q first. The motorcade arrived at the left chancellor's manor. Inside, a man with long dark hair and glasses sat on a wooden chair, quietly reading a book. The left chancellor kept reading his book as he asked General Liu why he came. It was strange to visit at the end of the year when affairs were so complicated. A female cat servant stepped forward and offered tea. The chancellor dismissed her with a quiet gesture. General Liu sat down and poured himself some tea. He teased his old friend about his grumpy face and said it was no wonder his daughter avoided him. The chancellor asked if he had come all the way from Lizhu just to scold him. The general said the scolding was just a bonus. That made the chancellor put down his book and ask what he really wanted. He found it amusing that the empire's great General Liu actually needed something from him. General Liu said it wasn't a big deal. He just wanted to know where his son-in-law came from. Then he joked that the young man was far better than the old man. Not only did this son-in-law perform well at Jingo Temple, but his medical skills were also incredible. That made him a rare talent. The chancellor looked up in complete confusion when he heard the words, son-in-law. General Liu went on to explain that his personal guard, Shi Nan, had been critically ill, but a prescription from this young man had pulled him back from death. Even the divine physician Li Zhao was so impressed that he almost wanted to take the boy as his master. The chancellor stayed silent as he tried to figure out which son-in-law he was talking about. General Liu said he wasn't an ungrateful man. Since he had received such help from the left chancellor's side, he would return the favor any time if needed. The chancellor's expression darkened. He remembered his daughter's excuses about wanting to become a senior cat master and refusing an arranged marriage. Now it seemed she had been hiding something else. General Liu then asked when the wedding between the two young people would take place. He even requested an invitation. Old Man Chu slowly looked up with a cold expression. He said his dear daughter should be asked about such matters. General Liu felt the sudden pressure in the room and realized something was wrong. He quickly stood up and said his goodbyes. He made an excuse about needing to return to the imperial palace and tried to leave before things got worse. But Chancellor Q placed a hand on his shoulder and told him to stay right there. Nervously, the general asked if there was something else. Old Man Q leaned in with a dangerous grin and demanded a proper explanation about this son-in-law. At the same time, at a warehouse in the Lizhu suburbs, sunlight streamed through the dusty roof. Inside, Lai felt a chill. A bad feeling crept over him as a hand covered his face. Guikan pinned him against the wall. She told him to shut up and move his hand, threatening to make his bad feeling come true. He reminded her that he never asked her to squeeze into such a tight space. He brought up that it was her idea. She told him to stay quiet because someone was coming. They hid together as footsteps echoed nearby. Outside, several men carried wooden crates across the warehouse floor. One of them complained about moving again so soon after settling in. The leader kicked him for talking too much. A nervous worker tried to calm the boss and said they were just curious since they had only just arrived. The worker asked if the threat came from Jingguo Temple. The boss confirmed it and told everyone to behave. He warned them that if they got caught, their own boss would crush them in prison. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the warehouse. They stopped working and looked around. One worker asked where the sound came from. It came from a large metal shipping container. Muffled voices echoed from inside the dark space. Gikan angrily asked where Lai was reaching. He apologized and said his phone was under her. She told him to grab it quickly. He complained that the space was too tight and he couldn't move. The workers went silent and stared at the container. A hand pushed open the heavy door with a sharp creak. The boss stepped forward first to check inside. 2 people were in the shipping container. Lai and Guikan were stuck in an awkward, intimate position, which made the workers freeze, and a few even got nosebleeds. Lai gave an awkward smile and tried to explain that he just needed to take a call. As he answered the phone, Guikan kicked the blonde man aside. Ajin's voice came through, warning him that things had gone wrong on her end. At the other end of the call, Ajin relaxed in a bubble bath. She held the phone to her ear and listened to the chaos. She asked what all the noise was about. Back to the scene. A mob of angry men chased after them. Lai shouted into the phone, telling Ajin to stop messing around. Geeson shot him a look and told him to focus and run. The hallway ahead was blocked. 2 muscular men stood there with rifles. Lai asked if they were really going to charge through gunfire. Guikan told him to do whatever he wanted. She refused to die before becoming a senior cat master. They reached a pair of windows on opposite sides. Both of them suggested splitting up at the same time. They exchanged a quick nod and agreed. Gunfire filled the hallway with smoke and flying shells. Guisan leaped toward one side while Lai sprinted toward the other. They shouted that they'd meet later as they dodged the bullets. Chaos broke out as the armed men accidentally fired at each other. Lai saw Guikan dive out the window. He shouted that he'd wait for her downstairs. He stayed behind to distract the pursuers and glanced back with concern. Guisan had planned to sneak in and gather evidence, but things had gone out of control. Now she could only hope for the best. Lai climbed out of a high window to escape. He dropped into a narrow alley, only to find a group waiting for him. A group of grinning thugs blocked the exit. A green-haired man rested a wooden bat on his shoulder and said he had been waiting for him. Sweat formed on Lai's face. The thugs closed in, surrounding him. They said this was their territory and made it clear he wouldn't leave easily. Lai muttered that they were like ghosts that just wouldn't go away. He reached into his pocket and gripped a small object. Then he threw it at them. The group flinched as it flew through the air. One of them shouted for everyone to get out of the way. Another wondered if it was Lai's cat. The green-haired leader shouted for everyone to move aside. He stepped forward to intercept the projectile, and it landed on the ground with a soft splat. It turned out to be a steamed bun stuffed with green herbs. They all froze in confusion. One man muttered that it looked like a leek bun. The leader realized he had been played. His face turned red with anger. He shouted for everyone to chase and kill the intruder. Lai turned and ran. Lai sprinted through the narrow alley. He knew no one would step in to help at a time like this, and even if he summoned Hoyo, they still wouldn't be a match for them. Hoyo spoke from his pocket and dared him to let her try. He shouted at her not to even think about it. He kept running as armed thugs chased him through the streets. He turned left. He had only been an Imperial cat handler for half a month, but he had already learned a few things. Cat demons were physically stronger than humans, but they weren't invincible. He knew they could still be killed by cold weapons and firearms. Fighting fully armed humans wasn't easy, even for a demon. In the end, a cat demon's true strength came from their laws. The problem was that with his current chi, he could only use Hoyo's law once at most. He quickly judged whether he could take them all out in a single attack. One of the pursuers shouted that the situation wasn't good because there was too much cover. The green-haired leader ordered his men to split up. He planned to cut Lai off and force him into an open area. He told the others to call backup and clear a path toward the auditorium. Lai kept running, but every turn was blocked, forcing him to change direction again and again. Then he saw an opening ahead. He burst through a set of doors and stepped into a wide, empty space. It was the auditorium. Heavy footsteps echoed behind him. The green-haired leader pointed out that there was nowhere to hide now. The thugs surrounded Lai and blocked every exit. They told him there was no escape. A dark smile spread across the leader's face as he waited to see where Lai would run. He ordered Lai to kneel and beg for mercy if he wanted a few last words. Lai stayed calm. He asked if they thought they had the advantage, just because this was their territory. He agreed that an open space was perfect for shooting, but then he asked if they had considered one important detail. The leader frowned, confused by his confidence. Lai gave them a piece of advice. He told them to check their intel before making a plan. He raised a glowing silk cage and called out Hoyo's name. Hoyo stepped out from the light. Lai told them that choosing a home ground was fair. However, he pointed out that a wide field of vision also meant the space was empty enough for his plan. If they had done their research, they would know that Hoyo, his imperial cat, could compress air into physical form. He reached out and asked Hoyo to take his hand. The firearm in his grip began to hum. A violent vortex of wind started swirling around them. An open environment like this was perfect for using that kind of cat law. A sly smile spread across Lai's face. He admitted he had been worried about how to take them all out in one shot. But now, he should thank them for making it easier. He raised the weapon and called for the cat law to activate. A massive vortex of energy burst from the gun and filled the entire room. The green-haired thug realized the danger and pointed in panic. He shouted for everyone to stop him, but it was already too late. Blinding light flooded the auditorium and blasted everything away. Our boy just used cat law air pressure shockwave. Energy burst outward in jagged waves. It blasted chairs and even the piano across the room. Even Lai lost his footing from the force. He fell to the ground. Blood spilled from his nose and mouth. Hoyo praised him, saying he was very clever. She helped him back up. Lai said it was a shame the enemies weren't cat demons. It would have been much easier. Suddenly, someone raised a gun. Hoyo was hit in the side. Lai froze in shock. It was the green-haired thug. He cursed and shouted that he almost fell for the trick. Lai gritted his teeth. He realized the last attack didn't have enough power to finish them off. The green-haired man aimed his gun at him. Lai reached into his pocket. He had no choice but to use it now. The thug frowned in confusion. The green-haired leader pressed the gun to Lai's head and demanded he hand over the object. He threatened him again, tightening his grip on the weapon. Lai calmly said it was just a leek bun and told him not to be nervous. A smirk formed on Lai's face as he asked if he was sure he wanted it. The thug got angry and shouted at him to stop lying and hand it over. Lai gave it to him. Then suddenly he said goodbye, grabbed Hoyo, and ran for the exit. The thug stood there, confused. Gunshots rang out as they chased after him. The green-haired leader glanced down at what he was holding. A faint ticking sound echoed. Fear spread across his face as he realized what it was. In the next second, a massive explosion ripped through the theater. Blinding light and debris blasted in every direction. The explosion could be seen from far away. Smoke rose high above the buildings. Keegan heard the blast and wondered what happened. She was getting impatient waiting for Lai. She stood on a sports field with the enemies already restrained in her cat's ink. A moment later, an officer approached Gukon and handed her a list of evidence and suspects. She frowned and asked why the results were far less than expected. The officer explained that a massive explosion had occurred near the warehouse, destroying most of the supplies. She signed the document and told him to bring it back to the temple. Then she turned and scolded Lai for the mess he caused. Guikan was so annoyed that she even brought up Kaizi. Lai explained that he was forced into a situation where cat law was useless, so he had to rely on the incantation grenades given by the temple earlier. He didn't expect them to be that powerful. She told him they could have recovered at least twice as many supplies if he hadn't blown everything up. Now only scraps were left. She inspected what remained and noted that most of it was average or low quality. Lai picked up a gray branching object and asked what it was. She identified it as antler ore. She explained that it was a fossilized antler from a die deer. He asked if it was valuable, and she confirmed that it was. She explained its uses. Low-purity ore was used to create demon-suppressing stones. High-purity crystallized antlers were key materials for cursed weapons. It was even considered a form of currency more valuable than gold. Not only that, refined antler ore could produce antler stones. These were essential for the daily cultivation of an imperial cat. Lai became interested. Now he understood why she was excited earlier. She told him to stop acting dumb and asked if he got it. He lied and said yes. Inside, he started calculating profit splits. Since she was strong, he knew a 20-80 split wouldn't work. At the same time, she was also thinking. She saw him as clever despite how he acted. She figured he wouldn't accept something like a 30-70 split either. At the same moment, both of them proposed a 50-50 split. They froze and looked at each other. Then they shook hands to seal the deal. It was agreed. No backing out. Meanwhile, the officer reviewed the final report stating that all target supplies were destroyed and nothing was recovered. He couldn't believe how exaggerated it sounded. A forest burned. At the same time, chaos unfolded. A young girl stood frozen, watching the battlefield. Corpses and torn bodies were scattered everywhere. Someone shouted for everyone to attack together and stop the man. The young cat girl was stunned. Other cat demons shouted not to be afraid. If the enemy ran out of strength, he might not be able to kill them all. The girl, Kaizi, watched everything burn. A cat, barely clinging to life, asked her why she ran. The Catwoman lay on the ground, covered in blood, her eyes filled with betrayal and sadness. Kaizi said nothing. She just stood there as the words sank in. At that moment, a massive, injured tiger warrior stepped in front of her. She didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on the Catwoman who had just died. The warrior glanced at the corpse and called out her name. Kaizi's face stayed blank. He told her that surviving in disgrace was not easy. The flames surrounding the forest twisted into the shape of a lion's face. The warrior told her to go while he stayed behind to hold them off. The enemy leaned closer and whispered that sooner or later she would have to face him. Kaizi turned and ran as fast as she could. The fire roared behind her, painting the forest in orange. She looked back one last time and saw the lion reflected in her eye. At the present time, Kaizi woke up with a sharp cry. She sat on her bed and pulled her knees to her chest. Her body trembled. The words echoed in her mind. Surviving in disgrace was not easy. Wind drifted into the room as the curtains fluttered open. She got out of bed and walked to the kitchen. She opened the refrigerator and grabbed a drink. With the can in her hand, she stepped onto the balcony. Kaizi looked down and saw Lai sitting on the grass below, meditating under the bright sunlight. A faint white aura flowed around his body. Lai slowly opened his eyes and let out a quiet sigh. He held a small, smooth stone as he recalled Guikan's lesson. The amount of ki depends on the strength of the Imperial Cat's law. With his current level, he could barely control Ho-Yo, let alone Kaizi. He took a deep breath. He crushed the stone in his fist, making up his mind to keep pushing forward. White energy flowed from his body as he focused. The steam-like aura rose into the air and drifted past Kaizi. She noticed him. Then she turned away, deciding to head back since it was boring. The sky turned orange as the sun began to set. Lai was still there, meditating. 6 hours passed, and his energy was completely drained. He had been trying to squeeze every bit of power out of a single antler stone. But it was far harder than he expected. He let out a tired sigh and flicked the stone away. It landed in a small pond with a soft splash. Then he noticed something. The pool was filled with antler stones that had already lost their energy. A sense of worry crept in. He didn't know how long it would take to master Huji's cat law. His slow progress started to weigh on him. Suddenly, Kaizi spoke. She said he was still far from his goal. She had already told him that during the Imperial Cat Handler test. Lai tried to remember. It was when he struck the machine and got a score of 386. He quickly started calculating. At his current speed, 386 stones would take around 2,300 hours. That was 100 days. And 100 days divided by 30. His eyes widened in pure terror as the numbers sank in. And that was if he trained for 3 straight months without eating, drinking, or sleeping. Kaizi asked him what he was expecting. She explained that human cat guardians held a transcendent status, and the price they paid was something ordinary people couldn't endure. Lai began to worry. If Huji's law was already this hard, then Hu Tai's or Hu Ming's would take even longer to master. Suddenly, Lai turned his head, his gaze sharp and serious. Kaizi flinched at the intensity. She asked him what he wanted. Lai asked how much chi capacity was needed to use her law. Caught off guard, Kaizi held back a laugh. Then, she burst out laughing. Annoyed, Lai snapped at her to stop, telling her he was serious. She said he was a bold dreamer. For someone at his level, she didn't expect him to say something like that. Kaizi pointed to the pink-haired girl as an example. She said it would take him 10 years just to catch up to Chu Guichen. Then she added that he would need 3 times that strength just to reach the level where he could even see her shadow. Lai quickly did the math. That was a gap of at least 30 years. Kaizi proudly declared that she was a level 5 cat demon. Just being able to contract with her was already a rare stroke of luck. She told him to think about it. Who else his age had contracted a level 5 imperial cat? Most contractors were already 50 or 60 years old. With a guardian like her, she said, entering the court as a minister or becoming a general commanding 3 armies would no longer be difficult. Lai let out a quiet sigh. He said he had no interest in any of that. He turned his back on her. Kaizi watched as he started fiddling with something. Curious, she leaned closer and asked what he was looking at. He said it was nothing. Just an old photo. The phone screen lit up, showing a picture of Lai surrounded by a group of happy cats. Kaizi's blue eyes widened as she stared at it. Lai said that in the past or the present, those cats were no different from family to him. He explained that in his hometown, picking up stray fur balls and bringing them home meant taking responsibility. Kaizi quietly listened. She wondered out loud if cats there weren't used for money, labor, or fighting. Lai froze, clearly horrified. He said no. Then he added that the way humans and cats lived here felt completely wrong to him. He told her that the salary of a junior cat handler was barely enough. Feeding 9 cats was already a struggle, so she better hope he could pass the intermediate assessment within half a year. He mentioned that intermediate cat guardians lived much more comfortably. Kaizi's expression slowly darkened as she stared at him. Lai felt a chill and asked what was wrong. She snapped, annoyed that he didn't say this earlier. She grabbed his shirt and started dragging him away. She told him that if he kept relying on his current training, he would never get promoted. Lai protested, telling her to wait since he had just finished training. Night fell over the city. Neon lights flickered on, filling the streets with color. A cat walked through a narrow alley. He approached a building and stepped into a quiet office. Behind a glass partition, a clerk called out that it was number 8's turn. A cat stepped forward. His hands were wrapped in white bandages. The clerk asked if he needed a loan, labor dispatch, or a legal identity. When the man stayed silent, the clerk looked up at him. The man leaned forward and placed a stained card on the desk. He said he wanted to make an appointment with the boss. He told the clerk to pass along a message. Brother Chen was away, and he had business with him. In a blood-stained boxing ring, an orange cat demon threw a heavy punch at his gray opponent. The gray fighter crashed onto the mat, already battered. The crowd roared. Some shouted for the orange cat to finish him, while others begged the gray fighter to fight back. High above the arena, a man sat in a dark VIP lounge. He let out a satisfied laugh. His bet had paid off. Around him, the crowd was consumed by greed and anger. Someone screamed that they had just lost their entire fortune on the match. The arena turned into a frenzy. Voices overlapped, all demanding the same thing: kill him. The fallen gray cat looked up, trembling. In a weak voice, he begged for mercy. The orange cat's eyes watered. He stood over his opponent, fists clenched tight. Then he glanced toward the VIP section. In the shadows, the man watched with a twisted grin, waiting. The orange cat gritted his teeth. He pinned the gray fighter down and started punching again and again. The crowd erupted in cheers. At that moment, another cat stepped into the VIP lounge. He trembled as soon as he entered. His eyes fell on a horrifying sight, a limbless cat being used as a chair by the man. The man, Baji, asked why he had come. Then his tone shifted. He asked where Li Chen was. Baji stuttered, trying to speak about Brother Chen. But before he could form a proper sentence, the man reminded him how well he had always treated them. Baji shrank under the pressure as the man's presence filled the room. The man stood up and placed a hand on Baji's shoulder. He asked if Chen thought he wasn't worth seeing anymore. Baji quickly denied it, trembling even harder. He said they would never forget the boss's kindness. Chen had just made a huge mistake and was too ashamed to show his face. The man's expression darkened. He said they both knew a huge mistake had been made. He reminded Baji of everything he had given them. Back when Chen was nothing more than a thug fighting in underground matches, the boss had given him everything. Errands, men, money. He even handed him control of an entire block, and this was how he was repaid. Baji gasped and begged the boss not to misunderstand. He said Chen promised he would explain everything. The man's expression snapped. He hurled a stack of papers straight at Baji. He roared, asking what exactly Chen thought he could explain. Could he explain provoking high-ranking officials of the empire? Could he explain kidnapping the female members of a general's family? Or the factory that had been entrusted to him, now reduced to ruins, with all the Dailu horns completely looted? And on top of that, those street cat idiots. Suddenly, the boss grabbed Baji by the throat. The boy choked out a desperate plea for mercy. The man's anger only grew. He reminded him that manpower was supposed to be recruited, yet Chen chose to target Cat Street instead. With a flick of his hand, Baji was thrown to the floor. The red-haired man calmly lit a cigar. He asked what they were even good for besides causing problems. He reminded Baji that he had fed them, sheltered them, and yet all they did was bring him more trouble. The man leaned closer, a cruel smile spreading across his face. He asked if they really thought he didn't already have enough problems. Then he slammed his foot down. Baji screamed as blood burst from his mouth, his chest crushed under the weight. The red-haired man stared down at him, eyes wide and almost manic. Then, he slowly stepped back. He muttered that it was only natural Chen didn't dare come back, but since Chen didn't show up, why did Baji? Baji knelt on the floor, coughing weakly. He whispered that Brother Chen just wanted one more chance. The boss cut him off. Baji slowly lifted his head, only to be kicked in the face. He was sent flying, crashing into the wall with a heavy thud. The man grabbed him by the ear, making Baji scream in agony. He asked what gave Chen the right to ask for another chance. Was it because of Baji, a filthy hybrid? Without hesitation, the red-haired man pressed the burning tip of his cigar into Baji's chest. The boy screamed as his flesh sizzled. The man let go and straightened up. He asked if Baji even knew Chen's biggest mistake. Barely conscious, Baji muttered that he didn't know. The red-haired man pulled out a handgun and aimed it directly at his face. He said the mistake was hiding like a coward and sending a hybrid in his place. Baji's eyes widened in pure terror. A gunshot rang out. Crimson blood splattered across the wall. Water dripped from a metal pipe and tapped against the stone tiles in a steady rhythm, inside an industrial tunnel. Chen adjusted a bandage. He carefully wrapped it around Baji's bloody shoulder. The scarred cat winced as the cloth tightened. Not convinced, Chen asked if the boss really wasn't that angry. Baji said the boss was very forgiving. The boy added that Chen had underestimated the boss's kindness. Baji said a chance for redemption was being offered. Chen only had to return and apologize properly. Baji was confused when Chen suddenly stood up. Chen asked if he really had to go back and apologize. He asked how it could be that simple when the boss wasn't easy to talk to. He admitted he had done too many bad things for the boss. He even knew things he shouldn't know. He said Milian was cunning and suspicious. He knew someone like him would never be allowed to exist, and that sooner or later, he would be eliminated. Chen let out a sigh. And on top of that, if the boss was really that forgiving, Baji wouldn't have been this badly injured. Baji went silent as he replayed what happened. A handgun was pointed straight at him while he was ordered to find Li Chen, and make him apologize in person. Baji dropped to his knees and clutched his head in pain. He had been told he might get another chance if he gave a clear explanation. Leon reminded him that if no one showed up that night, he would be treated as a defector. He was asked if he understood what happened to traitors in the Melian gang. Baji argued that the boss didn't kill him. Chen knew it was because he didn't go see him this time, and the boss needed him as a messenger. He said their corpses would have been thrown away if he had gone back with the boy. The boy was clearly shaken by that. He said the boss wanted him dead, but he wouldn't give him the chance. This time, if Baji didn't come back alive, Chen would escape. That's why he was spared. And because of that, he wasn't worried about letting him go back alone. Baji asked what they should do next. Chen admitted he didn't know either. He sat on the cold floor of the dark tunnel with the boy. He admitted he was unsure, then told Baji it was time for him to go. A metallic click echoed as the man reached for the boy's neck. He removed the heavy black collar. Baji stared in shock as the restraint was removed. Demonic power surged through his body. Meanwhile, Chen's own power began to fade. He winced in pain and broke into a cold sweat. He told Baji that he had already done what needed to be done. He felt weak. He placed a hand on Baji's shoulder and said that what came next was only between him and Melian. Chen ordered him to run as fast and as far as possible. He declared that his life and death had nothing to do with Baji anymore. He then turned and walked into the shadows of the tunnel. Baji asked what would happen to him if he left him alone. Chen knew Melian would never let him go. He said that if he didn't show up tonight, his bounty would be posted all over Liju by dawn. He thought about General Liu and a group of dangerous enemies. He remembered kidnapping the general's daughter, so he knew the man would never let it go. The Jingguo Temple and the cat hunters were mortal enemies, so even if he escaped before, he was never truly safe. But as long as he stayed within the Tang Empire, they would find him sooner or later. Chen walked deeper into the dark tunnel. He told Baji not to just stand there, but to run. He told him to live as a stray cat. He said survival was still possible, even if he got caught by the Jingguo Temple and lost his freedom. Chen looked back one last time and admitted he had done many wrong things and deserved to die, but Baji was different. He insisted that the boy should live. Baji lowered his head, his face filled with sadness and defeat. Chen disappeared into the darkness. At an alleyway. Chen sprinted through a dark, narrow alley. He glanced over his shoulder, sweat running down his brow. He wondered if he had lost his pursuers. Behind him, a gang of male cats in dark cloaks stepped out from the shadows. Their leader, a blue-haired cat, told him to stop right there as he barked orders for his men to kill Chen. Chen could only grit his teeth in frustration. One of the pursuers raised a handgun and fired. The bullet missed as Chen dove around a corner. He rushed past a large green dumpster and searched for a place to hide. The gang chased after him, but they lost sight of him and had to search the area. The alley fell silent. Slowly, the lid of the green dumpster lifted. Chen climbed out. He muttered that his enemies were getting crazier. He thought about Baji and wondered if he had escaped Liju. He knew he made the right call sending him ahead. With Baji's impulsive nature, escaping together would have been harder. A voice suddenly spoke behind him, asking if he could survive without Baji. Chen froze in surprise. Two figures stepped out from the mist at the end of the alley. A tall, muscular man with wolf-like features stood beside a female cat. They moved with calm, steady confidence. Chen didn't wait. He drew his weapon and took aim. He fired at them, but the attack was easily blocked. A strange whip-like force deflected the bullets, sending sparks into the air. Chen stared in shock at his opponents. The female cat looked at him with cold, glowing eyes. Chen turned and tried to run, but a glowing green whip lashed out. The energy wrapped around his ankle and yanked him back. He slammed hard onto the pavement. The large cat stepped forward and pressed a heavy paw onto his head. They realized Chen was the one who dared touch the big sister of their cat street. He demanded to know who gave Chen the nerve. The man gasped in disbelief when he heard the name, Cat Street. The beast pulled a sharp, gleaming dagger from his belt and smiled. He warned that every kindness was repaid and every grievance was avenged. The prisoner was told to be ready to pay the price for his actions. Suddenly, the woman placed a hand on the beast's shoulder, stopping him. The beast turned his head toward the silent woman. He addressed her as Big Sister, and asked how the man should be dealt with. Chen was stunned to see the Big Sister of Cat Street. Then he remembered the trafficked cats. She had been one of them. She said they would handle things according to Cat Street's rules. They were known as Cat Street, one of the 4 major folk powers in Liju. The next day, the sun rose over a grand traditional complex. Lai held an invitation from Cat Street. A small cat girl in a maid outfit smiled at them. She explained that the invitation was a token of gratitude for being saved earlier. She invited them to visit Cat Street. Guishan looked concerned. She said Cat Street was not a good place for cat handlers. Lai asked why. Even if the name Cat Street sounded normal, it was one of the largest gathering places for cat demons in all of Lizhu. It was known as a paradise for stray cats. Lai wondered if the Jingguo Temple had ever done anything about it. Guikan said every chief of the temple had considered an investigation. But even after many years, Cat Street still remained. She didn't expect that the kitten they saved on a whim was actually from Cat Street. The cat girl blushed and smiled at the group. Lai asked if she was a stray cat too. The girl quickly denied it. She explained that not all cats on Cat Street were strays. She said most members were like her with stable identities and jobs. She added that homeless cat demons only stayed there from time to time, but they usually didn't stay long. Lai nodded, starting to understand the situation. Gukan called out to him and warned him not to be fooled by the little kitten. She agreed with Sheng, saying that Cat Street members were not friendly toward cat handlers. She pointed out that they especially disliked those from the Jingo Temple. After all these years, this was the first time Cat Street had invited a human inside as a guest, so she warned him to be careful. She told him not to get so dazzled by the kitten that he couldn't even think straight. The girl became flustered by the warning. She insisted that would never happen. She explained that kindness was always repaid on Cat Street. She said she invited him because he saved her life, and she wanted to return the favor. She even offered to do anything he asked if he was still worried. Lai watched her and thought she actually seemed friendly, and he knew he had saved her life, so she wouldn't turn on him so easily. He decided it would be rude to refuse her invitation, and it was a chance to see something new. The girl lit up with joy at his decision and cheered. Guikan reminded him to be careful with everything. She explained that she wouldn't be going because she had other matters to handle. She told him to call her immediately if anything went wrong. Lai waved goodbye to her. But she suddenly came back. She grabbed his shoulder, remembering she still had something to tell him. She said that soon it would be time for the intermediate cat handler evaluation, so he needed to prepare well. She encouraged him to get promoted early and become a senior cat handler like her. She said it would make it easier to reach a certain goal, but stopped halfway. Lai was confused by her sudden silence. He asked what would be easier. She brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and blamed her impatience. She told him to stay safe and walked away. Lai and the girl finally arrived at Cat Street. The atmosphere felt heavy and grim. Many cat demons lived inside the crowded buildings. Lai noticed a cat girl in a wheelchair, her legs cut off and wrapped in bandages. A large beast man in a white shirt stepped in front of Lai and told him to keep his eyes to himself. He warned Lai not to wander or snoop around in a place like this. Otherwise, if something happened, he shouldn't blame them for not warning him. Lai kept walking, but could feel eyes on him. Cloaked figures with glowing red eyes watched from the shadows of an alley. More watchers sat on rooftops and peered out from windows. The cat girl walked beside Lai and addressed him as Your Excellency. She told him to put away his waist token first. Lai was surprised by her formal tone. He introduced himself as Gan Lai and told her to just call him Lai. He realized she hadn't told him her name yet. The girl blushed at his casual tone. She stammered and said her name was Louisa. In the background, other catmen watched in shock. Behind her, 2 catmen reacted in pure shock. They shouted that their big sister must be sick and that her face was burning. They even wanted to call a cat doctor. She turned and glared at them, while Lai stayed completely unaware. He simply said it was a nice name. He decided to call her by her name. Her cheeks turned red as she smiled and agreed. The young man noticed that the surrounding cat people were staring at him strangely. He knew the relationship between cat demons and humans was usually bad, but this felt a bit too obvious. It almost felt like he had a blood feud with them. She heard him and said that the term blood feud wasn't wrong. She explained that cats, whether house cats or wild cats, were seen as others by humans. It was pointed out that humans didn't need a reason to hate or reject them. She said humans didn't care about their identities or even their human forms. Every cat on the street had climbed up from the very bottom of society. Louisa recalled her past. She was seen washing piles of dirty dishes while catmen ran through a city in flames. She said that no matter how hard they worked, they were only fit for the lowest and most dangerous jobs. Lai finally understood why the cats around him looked so guarded. It was because he was an imperial cat handler from the Jingo Temple. She confirmed that conflict between humans and cats had always existed. The Jingo Temple, as the headquarters of imperial cat handlers, had been involved in countless conflicts with cat demons. So in a way, they lived in completely different worlds. She added that the hostility from the other cats was only natural because of his status as a handler. He watched her expression closely. He looked at the back of Louisa's head as she kept walking. Then he asked if anyone had ever tried to change this situation. They were stunned by his question. She wondered out loud why anyone would want to change the way things were. Then something clicked. She said maybe some people had tried to change things before, but she had never heard of them. Otherwise, a place like Cat Street wouldn't exist. Lai followed her deeper into the city. He realized she still hadn't explained what Cat Street really was. He asked her what kind of place it truly was. Suddenly, Louisa stopped. She turned to him with a smile. Lai looked at what she wanted him to see. He was stunned by the view. The narrow alley opened into a wide, lively street. Colorful signs and banners hung from the balconies. Birds flew across the sunlit sky as people went about their day. This was Cat Street. Cat demons of all kinds walked along the pavement. The whole district was filled with a vibrant, living energy. Louisa welcomed Lai into the Cat Street bar. He was stunned. She said it was a paradise for cats and the best sanctuary. The bartender noticed her. Other cats lit up when they saw her and called her Big Sis. She told Lai that all cats, whether good or bad, could find their own way of life there. Lai was impressed to see that everyone around him was a cat. A waiter opened the door for her, but he stopped Lai, since he was human. She told the waiter to let him in because he was someone their father, specifically, wanted to meet. The cat man stepped aside and allowed Lai to enter. They walked down a long staircase. It took a while before they reached the bottom. It was Cat Street's prison, used to punish sinners. Lai became curious about these sinners. She explained that they were those who broke Cat Street's rules, or enemies who opposed them. When it came to things like cat hunting, their stance was similar to Jingguo Temple, but their methods were very different. Now Lai understood why Cat Street and Jingguo Temple had such a bad relationship. She felt a little sad, thinking he might start to see Cat Street in a bad way too. They continued walking deeper inside. Eventually, they arrived at a massive door. She told him to go in. Inside was a large room filled with detailed statues. Several catmen sat around a long table lit by candles. They welcomed their benefactor to the Grey Hall, their home. Lai felt uneasy. He asked what they were planning to do. He could tell these old catmen were not people to mess with. If he had known, he would have listened to Guikan and brought Hoyo with him. But Hoyo had been too lazy and refused to come. Lai worried that if anything went wrong, he might not make it out alive. Louisa told him not to be nervous. She introduced the elders of Cat Street. They were the ones who followed the leader and built Cat Street decades ago. They were the ones who made all the decisions. She told him that Cat Street always repaid kindness and took revenge for grudges. Since he was their benefactor, he was now the benefactor of all Cat Street. She explained that in a moment, the elders would combine their cat techniques and place a mark on his body. Lai frowned, confused. She said this was how Cat Street treated its benefactors. It was very different from how they treated sinners. From now on, wherever he went in Lizhu, as long as Cat Street existed there, he could show the mark and receive help from its members. He asked what he needed to do. She told him to sit down, close his eyes, and relax. Vines suddenly spread from her hands and wrapped around him. He was startled as he was tied to the chair. His arms and legs were bound tightly. She told him it might hurt a little and make him feel dizzy, but it was normal. He was stunned. Then all the elders used a combined cat technique called shadow bind. Dark vines pushed into his chest. Lai cried out in pain. He clenched his teeth and endured it. After a while, it was over. The room lit up, and he was left alone. His eyes were unfocused. Then a voice asked if he was awake. A mature, green-haired catwoman wearing glasses stood before him and congratulated him. He had been turned into a cute cat girl. Lai was horrified when he heard he had become a cat girl. The long, green-haired cat burst into laughter, while Lai quickly checked if his body was still the same. When he did that, Louisa blushed deeply, covered her eyes, and turned away. She told father to stop joking. Lai was confused when she said that. He asked if the catwoman was her father. Louisa said yes. She introduced her as Madame Giovanna. She explained that her father was also the father of all Cat Street members. Lai realized that father was just a respectful title for the leader. Louisa told her father that Lai was the one. Giovanna understood that he was the benefactor Louisa had mentioned, but Lai looked confused. Louisa became embarrassed and stayed quiet. Giovanna said that Louisa talked about him often, so she didn't want to miss the chance to see the talented young man who had caught her daughter's attention. Lai said he only did what he could. She told him to relax and said she was just teasing. She said she had Louisa bring him here. What the elders placed on him was a shadow curse bond unique to Cat Street. A black mark appeared on his chest. It looked like an eye with a four-pointed star around it. Giovanna assured him it was safe. Even Louisa had the same mark. Although it was called a curse bond, it would actually help his human cultivation. And if he ever faced danger, Cat Street would sense it. and come to help him right away. Louisa grabbed his hand. She pulled him toward the exit and told her father they were leaving. Giovanna teased her for being in such a hurry. She said she wouldn't disturb them any longer. Suddenly, she tossed something at Lai and told him to catch it. Lai asked what it was. He looked at the badge in his hand. She explained that it was an identity symbol of Cat Street. With it, he could move freely through all of Cat Street's gray industries. Since Louisa said he was different, she warned him not to trust people from the Jingguo Temple. Still, she believed her daughter wouldn't lie. She hoped he could keep his true nature. She was about to mention the possibility of him betraying Louisa one day, but Lai cut her off and said that would never happen. He said deception and betrayal were not part of who he was. He added that understanding gratitude and grudges wasn't unique to Cat Street. He told her his attitude toward cats would not change easily. He had already proven that from the moment he saved Louisa. Giovanna was stunned by his resolve after they left. Giovanna asked everyone what they thought, even though the chairs looked empty. The elders suddenly appeared. One of them said Lai was an interesting young man. He noted that Lai didn't seem aggressive, but his inner will was much stronger than it looked. An elder with a scar over his right eye said Giovanna's warning was unnecessary. He believed the boy had already figured out the path he wanted to walk long ago. Even so, another elder questioned whether it was worth it for Cat Street to go this far for him. The elder sitting across from Giovanna reminded her that since Cat Street was founded, no cat had ever become a human's subordinate. Any cat who formed a contract with a human guardian would be expelled from Cat Street, let alone someone chosen as a successor. Giovanna asked them if they knew what Louisa had told her. Louisa said that Lai was different. She believed he was exactly what Cat Street had been searching for since the beginning. He was the hope to break the barrier between humans and cats. Giovanna said that before that incident, she had never seen that kind of look in Louisa's eyes. One elder sighed and said Louisa had grown up, and they would have to respect her choice. Outside the bar, Louisa apologized to Lai for her father's behavior. She told him not to take those words to heart. Lai asked if the person earlier was her godfather. To him, the whole group felt like a mafia. Louisa explained that her father was a foreigner, and she used to belong to a mafia family overseas. Later, she and some of her family came here and built Cat Street together. She said that cat society was very different from human society. Keeping order required not just rules, but real power. The hierarchy among cats was based on the absolute gap in strength. Lai became curious. He asked if a level 5 cat was very strong, and what kind of position they would hold. Louisa answered that in all of Cat Street, only her father had reached that level. She explained that cats at that level rarely stayed alone, and they almost never joined groups like Cat Street. Even someone who had just reached level 5 could easily become the leader of their own faction. Any wild cat that reached level 5 would break past territorial instincts and form a cat village or even a cat town. She said that years ago in Lizhou, a level 5 cat demon tried to build a cat town. But before it could grow, Jingguo Temple sent a large army and wiped it out. Tens of thousands of wild cats scattered in fear. Lai was shocked. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by a commotion. Louisa asked what was happening, and Lai suggested they go check. Several men were kicking someone on the ground. The man on the ground noticed them. He begged them not to kill him. Then he arrogantly shouted for Jingguo Temple to come and save him. Lai froze in place. The man added that he had important information to report to the Jingguo Temple. Those cats noticed their big sister. Louisa glared at them, and they immediately fell silent. Lai recognized the man on the ground as Li Chen and asked why he was there. But one of the cats interrupted and warned Lai that since he had entered Cat Street, he should mind his own business. Lai turned to Louisa. He asked what they were doing. She told him the man belonged to Milian. After Lai saved him before, Cat Street had been tracking him and finally caught him a few days ago. Chen tried to speak, but a cat kicked him for interrupting their big sister. Lai was shocked. Chen fell to the ground. Louisa said that Cat Street was different from Jingguo Temple. Lai looked uneasy. Louisa and the large cat both stared coldly at Chen. She said that Chen had harmed them before and that he was a professional cat hunter from the Milian gang. For people like him, there was only one ending in Cat Street. Another hooded cat pulled out a dagger. He moved to strike Chen, but Lai rushed forward. Suddenly, someone told the cat to stop. The cat paused and looked at Louisa for orders. She gave a small nod, so he stopped. Lai helped Chen up. Chen tried to speak to the representative of Cat Street. He said he was sorry for what he had done before and claimed he was no longer part of the Milian gang. Louisa frowned. Lai asked what this Milian gang was. He remembered Chen saying he had something to report and asked if it was about them. Chen recognized Lai and found it ironic that a professional cat handler from Jingguo Temple had never heard of the Milian gang. Louisa explained that, like Cat Street, the Milian gang was an independent armed group founded by the cat hunter leader Maximilian, separate from the Jingguo Temple. But unlike them, they treated cat spirits as tools for profit and didn't care about their status. Lai was shocked by this. He remembered the trafficked cat demons. Chen confirmed that the Milian gang was exactly that kind of organization. Lai thought about Chen's cat, but he realized the cat wasn't with him, so he asked where he was. Chen said Baji wasn't there. Chen admitted he had made many mistakes and knew he had to pay for them. He accepted being hunted, but said Baji was innocent and shouldn't suffer for his crimes. Lai was stunned. He realized he had let Baji go, and he praised Chen for it. He felt relieved that Chen wasn't like the others who treated cats, even their own, as tools. Chen said that Baji was his cat, and as long as he stayed with him, even for one day, he had to treat him well. He didn't care what others thought of him, but Baji was someone he would protect to the end. That made Lai smile. He asked Chen what kind of help he needed. He asked if Chen wanted him to pass the Milian gang's information to the Jingguo temple in exchange for protection, or if he wanted to use the temple's power for revenge. Chen was speechless. He felt relieved, as if the heavens hadn't abandoned him. He knew he should have died long ago, but there were still things he needed to settle. He also knew that the Jingguo temple strictly controlled the illegal capture and enslavement of cat spirits, and that made it the perfect choice. Meanwhile, in another setting, Gikan received a call while soaking in a bathtub. She asked Lai why he was calling so late. His answer shocked her so much that she slipped under the water. He told her he had found the locations of 4 large illegal antler stone processing plants, along with a weapon factory that had enslaved over 1,000 wildcats. The scale was too big for him to handle alone, so he asked for her help. Meanwhile, Lai stood on the phone and waved goodbye to Louisa. He asked Guikan if she remembered the illegal cat hunters they encountered before. Cat Street had been investigating them, and Louisa had given him detailed information about the forces behind them. It all pointed to a group called the Milian Gang. Guikan asked where he was and said she would send people right away. She moved quickly and grabbed Sheng without warning. This was the perfect chance for a promotion. With a case this big, even if they only got 30% of the credit, it would still be enough for her to move up. After settling things, Lai ended the call. Now, his plan was to hide Chen's identity from the Jingguo temple and keep him safe. Chen had once been a trusted member of Milian, so he assured Lai that the factory locations were accurate. He reached out his hand and told Lai that once everything was over, he would become his agent and handle things Lai couldn't deal with personally. Lai shook his hand and said it was a pleasure doing business with him. Under the full moon, at one of the factories, helicopters flew across the night sky as chaos unfolded below. Soon after, armored vehicles rushed forward at high speed toward the factory, preparing for action. A soldier warned them to stop the vehicle, saying the area ahead was within the factory's internal radar range. The vehicles stopped immediately. Lai looked down at the massive facility and was shocked by its size. Guizan proudly spoke about her status. She said that even a quasi-senior was still a senior, and there were fewer than 10 spirit cat handlers like her in all of Lizhou province. With her rank, she rarely faced trouble. She added that aside from Jingguo Temple, even the royal army would support her if needed. A report came in saying that an unusually strong energy signal had been detected beneath the factory. A soldier in the helicopter confirmed that the final illegal factory site had been located. It was about 20 meters below the target area. Based on radar, there were at least several thousand tons of high-quality antler ore stored underground. The total value could easily reach hundreds of millions. Lai and Guikan were stunned. She grabbed his shoulder. She told him that the two of them would land there, while the rest stayed on standby. She planned to enter the combat zone from the ground. But Lai refused and tried to persuade her that there was no need to rush. He suggested landing first and making a plan. But before he could finish, she grabbed him. She jumped. He screamed as they fell through the air. Meanwhile, someone far away zoomed in on a cat. One of the cats sensed something and turned in their direction. The cat, named Batel, was asked by his companion if something was wrong. He said it was nothing. Finn adjusted his position. He wondered what kind of person could feel his gaze from that far away. Suddenly, a hand tapped his shoulder. It was his friends. They startled him, looking half asleep like zombies, which made sense since he called them in the middle of the night. He said they would talk once they arrived. Yan asked who he meant. He replied that there was no one else. Then he saw figures falling from the sky. Guikan landed smoothly. Everyone was shocked to see her. She didn't expect Lai to call the others as well. But when they looked at Lai, they saw him bent over, throwing up beside a tree. Yan complained that this was the person Finn had been talking about. Lai was still dizzy from the fall. Finn became serious and asked what exactly was buried under that factory. He didn't expect Lai to ask for help and also bring Guikan along. Lai said he would keep it brief. He explained that the gang they had taken down before had a base beneath the abandoned factory. He added that the leader was Mi Lian. Ajin was startled when she heard the name. Finn asked if she knew him and if he was someone important. She hesitated for a moment. Then she said he wasn't just anyone. If Lai was telling the truth, then Milian was the founder of the Milian Gang, the largest underground force in Liju. He had ruled the underworld there for 20 years. Finn and the others were shaken. Since they weren't from Liju, they couldn't fully grasp it. But for her, Milian was a name she had heard since she was a child. He was once wanted in an international spirit cat trafficking case. It was said that at the time, a special grade spirit cat user from Jingo Temple took the case and fought him alone. After 3 days and nights, the man returned empty-handed and the case was dropped. Later, that same expert had to rest for half a year because of his injuries. Everyone was stunned. A special grade spirit cat user was someone who controlled a level 5 spirit cat, and yet someone like that had been injured by a criminal like Milian. But what shocked them even more was they had been called out in the middle of the night to deal with someone like him. Guisan told them not to lose confidence. They would strike in the early hours when everyone was asleep. Meanwhile, Milian waited, wondering when they would make their move. He smiled. He asked Baji what he thought. Baji was tied up, hanging by his arms. His body was covered in wounds. At the factory. It was a quiet night. The cat workers kept working. A large cat walked around, making them uneasy. The large cat entered a room. He reported to the boss that the goods had already been delivered. In at most 30 minutes, their men on the perimeter would be ready for combat. Milian called them a bunch of idiots. He said they must think he was easy to deal with. He added that, if it were that simple, he would have died at the hands of those Jingo Temple dogs long ago. Batel noticed something. He turned to Baji. Milian asked how the stock in the factory was being prepared, along with the gift he had arranged. Batel said everything was ready. The truly valuable shipments had already been moved out, leaving only low-grade stock behind as bait. Once the intruders made their move, they would seal the perimeter and wipe them out completely. Milian smiled, excited to give them a game they would never forget. If Chen won the gamble, then at worst, he would just lose a few factories. But if Chen lost, Baji would die. Bombs were attached to the pole where he was hanging. Since Chen liked to act righteous, Milian was curious to see what choice he would make this time. Meanwhile, Guikan and the others ran through the forest. She went over the plan one last time. They had clear objectives. The first and main goal was to infiltrate the factory and find Milian. The second was to seal all possible exits and assist the main Jingo Temple force in capturing the Milian gang. Along the way, they would also rescue the stray cats being illegally enslaved. She was about to continue when Yan interrupted, asking if they were also supposed to stop Milian from escaping. Lai stepped in and clarified that their top priority was to protect themselves and the Imperial cats. After all, based on Ajin's information, if the enemy truly had a level 5 royal cat, the situation would be extremely dangerous. Inside, he felt uneasy. He was worried that things could spiral out of control. Back then, KZ had warned him not to use his ability carelessly in front of others, especially not in front of people from the Jingguo Temple. He had asked her why. Even though she didn't fully understand how his power worked, she knew one thing: his blood was completely different from normal humans. It carried a terrifying force that made all cat demons tremble. If the Jingguo Temple discovered that, he could end up as a test subject. At that moment, Lai pulled out his dagger. Guikan told everyone to stay alert since the factory lights were off. Yan guessed that the thugs had already gone back to rest. Lai smiled, realizing Chen hadn't lied. Between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m., there was a high chance the gang would be resting. Team 1, made up of Yan and Ajin, was told to move out half an hour before the main attack. Their job was to sneak into the factory, locate the stolen hawk deer antler goods, and gather information about the layout. Team 2 consisted of Finn and a brown-haired teammate. They would leave at the same time as Team 1 and guard the 2 entrances. Once the main attack began, they would guide Jingo Temple forces inside and help suppress any resistance. Team 3 was Guitan and Lai. Their mission was to start the final assault, create chaos, open chances for the other teams, and hold off any high-level enemies until reinforcements arrived. Finn looked uneasy and asked if their backup could be trusted. Lai told him not to worry. Earlier, he talked to Louisa about what Chen had said. She grabbed his hand. She assured him that if the information was confirmed, Cat Street would help as well. Lai believed her. 60 minutes until the general offensive begins. A car sped through the road. It was Chen. After making a turn, he stopped the car. He stepped out and looked at the factory from a distance. He took out his phone. He saw a message from Lai, telling him not to worry because everything would be settled soon. Jingo Temple had even sent out their elites. Lai had even attached a confident photo of himself, but Chen still looked uneasy. Suddenly, he received a call from a royal cat operator, Datang Lijo Yi Tong. His face turned serious. He answered the call. The voice on the other end said they had a message from Mi Lian. Chen grew angry. He had already reported the infiltration that night, yet they were still asking for more. They warned him that if he didn't want to lose his imperial cat, he had better stay quiet. He was told not to reveal anything about the factory to those people. Then he received a photo. It showed Baji tied up, with Mi Lian holding a dagger beside him. Chen's face turned pale. He rushed back into his car and sped off. Meanwhile, inside the factory passage, Yan and Ajin moved carefully. But Yan accidentally kicked a small pebble. They froze. The pebble hit a metal pipe with a loud sound. At once, someone called out, asking who was there. A man shined a flashlight in their direction. There was no one in sight, but he felt something was off. He and his partner searched the area. They found nothing, since Yan and Ajin were clinging to the ceiling. They felt uneasy, but eventually left. Ajin nodded to Yan, signaling it was safe. She created small platforms so they could step down quietly. They reached the ground. Yan told her to wait. She used a technique called seeking scent. She focused deeply. Her aura spread through the factory. Then she confirmed that the two guards had already moved far away. Yan knew they couldn't keep going like that. She asked how long they had been inside. Ajin said it had been 20 minutes, and they had already mapped most of the area near the factory entrance. But when it came to the location of the Dailu antlers, their instruments showed strong energy signals all around them. Yet they still couldn't find the warehouse where the goods were stored. Yan thought about it. Ajin suggested going back to the processing workshop entrance and following some workers to find the hidden goods. Yan rejected the idea. There were less than 10 minutes left before the main attack. She said they should first send the mapped data to Lai and the others outside to make sure the assault would go smoothly. As for the stolen goods, she planned to go deeper after sending the message. With her technique, scent search, there was no way they wouldn't find thousands of tons of antler stone. Ajin agreed with the plan. They continued moving forward. Suddenly, Yan sensed something behind them. She turned around confused when she saw Lai. She asked what he was doing there, but he suddenly rushed forward and attacked them. Meanwhile, in the forest, Guikan was asleep. Lai told her that her phone was ringing. He shook her awake, saying that Yan and the others had sent a message. She jolted awake, wiped her drool, and checked the message. It was good news. They had successfully gathered intel near the factory entrance. She asked Lai if he remembered their mission. He said yes. They would lead the assault, break into the factory first, draw out the enemy's strongest fighters, and stall them as long as possible. He had Hu Tai, Hu Ning, and Ho Yo with him, so he believed things would go smoothly. Kaizi had told him to bring them along, even if he couldn't fully control them yet. And if everything went wrong, he still had a secret move. But he had no idea what she meant. Guikan asked why he was zoning out, then told him to get ready. She blew a whistle, and a sharp sound echoed. In an instant, the helicopters surged forward. All units were mobilized. Meanwhile, inside the factory, a few men were busy on their phones. One of them asked if the other heard something. His friend said he didn't. They looked outside, but it was too dark to see what was making the noise. Then they saw a flare. Soldiers began to move. The man quickly hit the alarm to warn everyone about the attack. Sirens blared across the factory. Mi Lian had already been waiting for them. Finn guided Guikan on where to go. She rode on her ink while carrying Lai behind her. She spotted a target. Without hesitation, she activated her technique, cat magic, steel and ink play, ink shot isolated mountain. She hurled the pole forward. A massive explosion erupted on impact. Purple flames burst across the ground. Several thugs were caught in the blast. Lai was stunned by her attack. Then something caught his eye. More thugs were rushing toward them. Guichen said they were overestimating themselves. The next moment, those men were taken down with headshots. Guichen told Lai not to worry and to leave everything to her. She used Sheng's cat law and formed a whip made of ink. She swung it. The whip split into small ink bullets. The thugs had no idea what hit them. Once struck, ink ropes wrapped around their bodies. They struggled and groaned as they were fully bound. Lai was impressed, but he still felt useless. She told him to stop thinking like that and hold on tight. She wrapped an ink rope around his chest. Then she dashed forward, dragging him along. Lai was shocked by how sudden it was, but she said speed was everything in battle and they couldn't let the enemies escape. She told everyone to keep up. They rushed into the factory. Lai took down the guards inside with precise shots. He noticed that the rendezvous point they had set with Yan and the others was nearby. Gikan confirmed it and told him to check the comms since they might reach out. She warned him to stay alert, as this place looked like the enemy's main hideout. Meanwhile, Mi Lian watched everything on a screen. His target had arrived. Apparently Yan and Ajin were already injured and restrained. A fake Lai sat beside Mi Lian. She realized that someone could actually disguise himself as Lai. Her eyes shifted to Batel, standing behind Mi Lian. Mi Lian noticed her gaze and turned toward her. She let out a frightened scream. Her face turned pale. She was terrified of Mi Lian and his cat. Mi Lian scoffed. He called out to Batel, expecting him to already know what to do. Batel replied that he understood. Yan grew curious. Batel listened through the communicator, then he dropped it on purpose and crushed it under his foot. He told the other fierce-looking cats that they were moving out. They became excited at once. A thick-browed cat told Batel, whom he called Brother T, to give them the humans inside after the mission. A blue-eyed female cat wondered what she should take for herself. A large gray-haired cat said they should finish the boss's mission first. He reminded them that the boss personally sent them and that they should feel honored. He also brought up how the boss had helped them before with the Cat-God Covenant. The female cat stuffed a furball into his mouth to shut him up. Batel showed no emotion. He was determined to make them disappear, just like the others before them. Back to our MC, Lai told Guikan that he had received a message from Yan and the others. They said they had found Milian's location. Guikan took the communicator from him to confirm it herself. She listened, then looked toward the direction they were heading. Then she said, "Let's go." Alright, that's it for today's story. If you want the weekly chapter updates for this series, those will now be uploaded on my second channel, Manhwa Updater. So if you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to check it out and join the update gang. Thanks for watching, stay cool, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.